Hello, GI Joe fans. My name is Steve. This is episode 293 of GI Joburg, and we've entitled it The October Guard. I'll be your host on this adventure, but I'm joined by my co-hosts Paul.
Ja, Toverish. Let's do episode tonight. Yes, it's gonna be good times.
And Rob.
It's me, Rob. We'll do accents tonight, yes?
Yes, da.
Certainly hope not.
Dada.
Imagine if we tried
whole
to keep
episode.
that up the entire... Gross.
What do you mean, Mirjin? What you talking about, Mirjin? This is my
So
accent.
smell your voice. I talk like this all the time, yes.
We get one-way ticket to banning Russia.
Clearly, we are in fine spirits tonight. Hello, gentlemen. Happy Father's Day.
Yeah, happy Father's Day to
happy
you, dude.
Father's Day
Thing
to
is, you're
you.
actually a dad.
Well, you
You're the
don't
dad
know.
of
Maybe
us,
the two of you have sired some illegitimate little bastards somewhere along the line.
If that was the case, I'd be so fucking happy, but also annoyed that it was hidden from me. You know?
True.
True.
saying.
Gee
Like Patrick,
whiz.
like Picard. Spoilers.
Don't spoil.
What? Oh my
I
goodness.
just got Amazon Prime again, man. I just
Watch
got it.
faster. Watch faster.
So, if anyone didn't get that, if you're not Trekkies out there, Rob just gave us a spoiler for Picard season 3.
Well,
Shame
luckily
on you,
everyone
Rob.
spoke over
Shame
me.
on you.
Freaking
Well,
Gates
I don't
McFadden
believe-
almost spoiled it.
I don't
for me.
believe in spoilers. I mean, like, get over it. Spoilers. Fuck.
Yeah, but now what'll happen is forever in my memory, it'll be colored. It'll be like, when did
There's
you
no
learn
colouring.
that Darth Vader was Luke's dad?
Ah,
yeah,
now you
so
had
the
to
tourist-
ruin
the
that.
video
I
shop
still
told
need to
me.
watch. I still need to watch Flash Gordon. Ah, Paul, you just ruined Flash Gordon for me.
What?
All right. Let's step back from the precipice before we lose any more listeners. This is the episode of GI Joburg recording in the wake of JOEFest 2023. It's also
Oh
recording
my
in the wake
God.
of the HasLabs. So I was about to say Sky Striker because that's a phrase I've said many times. But no, the Haslab Dragonfly announcement, which has now funded. It has passed
Wow.
its first tier unlock of Night Force Ripcord, and now we see before us Glenda, the
Whoa.
Argentinian pilot or chopper co-pilot. Yeah.
And also in the wake of the news of them finally confirming the continuation of G.I. Joe and where it's going to be, the comic books.
Okay. Should we? Because this is
I
a
don't have a picture for
comic-centered
that.
episode. Yeah, nice. But no, we can. This is a podcast. We don't need pictures for
We
everything.
can say whatever the heck we want.
Rob, do you want to lead with that? The news of the new publisher?
Well, it is Skybound Image Comics. So Skybound is the imprint
Kirkman,
run by
isn't it?
Robert Kirkman of
Yes.
Walking Dead, Invincible, et al. Fame.
It's a cool
And
cover, hey?
if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, you'll see the first cover for issue 301 provided by Andy Kubert.
Which I was so pleased to see.
Absolutely
Personally.
incredible. It'll be dropping apparently in November. Will be the first issue of the new run, and ahead of that, they also announced that there'll be 2 other comic books running. I don't know if they're one shots or miniseries or something, but I believe there will be a Duke #1 coming out next year, as well as a Cobra Commander #1. Although I
Duke
haven't read up
#1?
too much about those. But
Oh,
this
okay.
is Real American Hero Continuing with Larry Harmer and art by Chris Moonaham, who I actually don't know much about, but I hope his art's good.
There's
I'm
a
very
mild
excited.
spoiler on the cover.
Oh my goodness!
Mild in
Is it a real
terms of,
cover?
well, like when we last saw Duke, he was in the cockpit of the C-130 plummeting towards
Oh
the
my
ground with
goodness.
its engine on fire. He's on the cover of this new issue, so I guess Duke lives, guys.
Either that, or it's just a big, exciting cover, just showing off how
True.
cool the vehicles look and all that.
Well, no,
So it might not be a spoiler.
I'm delighted to see that this cover, at least in my estimation, seems to be using the characters that were in play at the end of All In, at the end of the IDW run. So and it's even got the Wolverine. It's for anyone not watching the YouTube version, if I may describe it briefly, it's kind of an homage to issue number 1 in that it's got a tank and Joe's adorning the tank and leaping off the tank and shooting basically the camera and shooting over our heads, except it's got updated characters. And the update to the characters kind of is reflective of the people who, as I say, were in play at the end of issue 300. So we've got Roadblock leading the charge, we've got Duke and Scarlet flanking him, Storm Shadow is on the tank, Covergirl is riding the Wolverine, Dawn Moreno is present, and a Snake Eyes looking fella. Who could it be? Could it be Sean? Could it be the real Snake Eyes? We'll find out, won't we?
Or at least they're standing up.
True, and I love how it's framed by the guys in the back, Stalker and someone shooting into the sky.
It is so rad to see an Andy Kubert cover.
For GI Joe. I think that's
this guy
fantastic.
used to make X-Men such a big thing for me. I loved Andy and Adam Kubert actually.
Well, I feel like
And
they're putting
Joe
out all
Kubert,
the
late,
stops.
I think it's the late Joe Kubert now. Yeah.
They're putting out all the stops for this, and I believe also Skybound will be pushing forward with a shared universe as well between GI Joe and Transformers, and I think it'll be introduced in some sort of mini series that's coming up very soon.
Void Rivals.
Yes,
And that's actually been released.
I think
it's currently
hasn't issue
available.
one? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I need to go read it right now. Right now.
I am actually
Since Motor holding it, Gary V had his copy.
Hey.
So I assume it's in people's hands and people can make their minds up. Look, it's got very little to do with Joe as far as I can glean, but it does establish this shared universe. It's going to be happening out in space, and the Transformers are in it. So
well, they've certainly tried
Whoop-de-doo.
before. I hope that this attempt goes much better.
Well, actually, I'm so glad that you sort of mentioned that, because just for the listeners who have maybe joined us and are new, what are your opinions, guys, on GI Joe and Transformers crossing over in a sort of maybe a movie world, a comic world? How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, tell us in the comments below.
No, not just you
anywhere
guys,
else.
not just the listeners. You
Send us an email.
bags.
Oh, you mean us guys?
Yes.
It's fascinating. I mean, it kind of makes the GI. I don't know. It's interesting, but also it makes the GI Joes less, like powerful in their own right. I mean, once you have giant robots, it makes. I mean, what can GI Joes do against other robots? Really?
Kill them.
Well, they can kill them, of course, but I mean, it feels like they become less effective when your enemies are these giant robots. They feel secondary to the actions of the robots a lot of the time.
Okay.
I mean, I think some people pulled it off pretty well. I mean, think Tom Shirley's Transformers versus GI Joe, or the other way around, was fantastic. He did a very good job of kind of like marrying the two franchises together. I'm always open to seeing like where things will go next, and with Robert Kirkman on board writing this, at least the start of the shared universe, he's a smart writer. He's written a lot of very
really
long-term stories,
Correct.
and he thinks. I mean, it appears that he thinks big. You know, I think he can write things very long term, and it always feels like he has a plan of kind of where he's going. And I generally I would trust in him to kind of put forward a very interesting interpretation of Transformers GI Joe.
And you, Steve, where do you come from on this?
I'm always going to give it an open mind, because
Yeah.
if you do that, you get to go down the amazing, like, fever dream Technicolor world of Tom Shirley's Transformers versus G.I. Joe. But you also get to go down the world of Aubrey Citizen's death of G.I. Joe comic books with Scarlet's Strike Force. Because that happened in the wake of Revolutions. And I guess I was intrigued by the fact that, like, on the G.I. Joe team, you have a Decepticon Seeker jet. That's a fun little curveball, and puts you in a very strange an exciting new headspace. So yeah, like I'll always be interested to see GI Joe juxtaposed with something else, and Transformers is their nearest, I suppose, toy franchise. But in my opinion, the most successful integration of these two is if you think about them as like toy box rivals. You know, if you have that level of playfulness as Tom Shirley brought to his action sequences, that makes things more interesting because it does kind of eschew believability and realistic, action for more fanciful stuff. And that's where, yeah, a GI Joe and a Transformer can stand toe to toe, and the action becomes interesting and unpredictable. So I don't think we're going to get that with this. I think we're going to get very kind of realistic presentations of these two worlds, a la the Devil's Due run. You remember that?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm actually
It
quite a
was
fan.
great at the time, but like when you see what can be done, when these two mediums kind of meet in this almost toy box space, as I say, with the Tom Shirley book, you kind of wish that that was how it was always handled. It's hard. It hits hard as hell, but it has a light touch, if that makes any sense. It packages itself
It's whimsical. Yeah.
so wackily, yeah, but it
Yeah.
still tells an extremely moving and interesting story. Anyway,
Okay.
I think that's enough of an answer to your question, guys. JoeFest 2023.
Well, to
Any,
answer my own question.
Is that why you ask a question of me and Rob?
Yeah,
Yes, it
because
is. It's to give him a
it's
chance
all
to
three
talk.
of us have an opinion. So I
Right.
would like to see what you guys think as well before I jump in
Before
and
telling
soapbox
us.
the whole thing.
Hell yeah.
Well, just for the listeners' sake, for new listeners and stuff like that, I'm a big fan of this happening. I think it's a cool idea. I think I kind of like the idea of Transformers and GI Joe being a thing on the big screen and on media, because I feel like we can get spin-offs and things like that, and maybe start telling the real GI Joe story. Don't know how I feel about them being an ever-present thing in the comic books, but I suspect that will be a symptom of the success of the movies, if the movies are successful, which I really hope they are. And I also think that this is a little bit, don't want to say late, but it should have happened sooner. I think it could have happened 3 GI Joe, or at least 2 GI Joe movies ago. I think they should have just brought the Joes in. And I've always said, and I'm going to say it again, the military action in the Transformers films are still the best GI Joe movies. And yeah, they could have just integrated it in from there and just made it a whole thing. And Hasbro could have made lots of money and it could have been great. So let's see if they get it right this time. Cool. There we go. That's my opinion.
Hell
Thank
yeah.
you.
JoeFest, I am very envious of everyone who got to go. It looked like it was a fantastic time, and it looked like tons of GI Joburg friends and patrons and got to be there, and it looked like absolutely incredible.
Yeah, shout out to members of the Berg Force who were in attendance wearing GI Joburg shirts. We appreciate you. We see you. Thank you. We felt very included. And yeah, it was nice to see you all together, fellas. That's quite special. And I'm glad you became online friends and now
Physical.
physical. Yeah, exactly.
You
Olivia
guys got
Newton-John
physical.
comes to mind.
Also, a big shout out to that hunk of love known as Hans Chow. Dude. Just a
Paul, you
light
go
bulb.
down a slippery slope now. You're gonna name drop one and not everyone else. Why is
No,
Hans
I
on
just
a pedestal? Hmm?
No, I'm not
Gaz
gonna
is in
name
the
drop.
chats right now.
I'm specifically name dropping Hans because Hans had a very similar experience to GI Joburg in that he went overseas to go to JoeFest, and he got to meet a lot of the people that he's friends from the Berg Force and all that, and he was just so cool with like putting pictures up. And just, if you guys know Hans in any capacity, you just know that this guy's just a light bulb. You put him into a room and he just lights people up around him. And just wanted to do a shout out to Hans because he's just such a sweet and awesome human being. And it was just fun to see his pics. another guy who was also really cool to see online was our good friend Zazzle. And
Good
him
friend.
living out
How do you
his
say his
GI
Such a
name
good
Joe.
friend, and I just pronounce his name.
Because I always
Sergeant-
feel like I get it wrong, so I just
Sergeant
figure I'd carry
Gotta
Slaughter's
say with
Slaughterhouse.
Australian
That's the
accent. Zazel.
And he also had an incredible experience, and it was also great to see his whole thing. I mean, he was doing warrior races or something with the guys, and
Yes,
and all kinds of stuff that was going down. So
he and Sergeant Slaughter's daughter, Kelly Remus, they've become online friends and now physical friends. We've got to find a better term for it than that.
Real.
They like before he even worked out his jet lag, they were doing some kind of like serious obstacle course race, like some kind of survival challenge course. I mean, she put him up to it. She was like, "You're doing this, boy," and he was like, "Okay." But it looked like, I mean, he made it to JoeFest still on his feet, so he must have fared okay. It didn't wipe him out completely. Hey guys, do you remember our experience at JoeCon? Like we were just running on borrowed time. We were so exhausted. 15-hour
Yeah.
flight followed almost immediately by a 15-hour drive.
yeah,
Perhaps more than 15 hours. I don't know how much time we spent in that car, but
that was a
we
lot.
got there like shadows of ourselves.
Yeah.
And then it was joke on. And then it was like, it's go time, guys.
We're alive.
But it was
Hardcore. So,
amazing.
max
Mm.
respect to anyone doing massive transits to get to the show and then still have the show and be present and be excited and energetic, because it's a big ask. It's a big drain on you, really.
There was lots
I'm
to
sure
be
you're still
excited
feeling the
about.
effects. Yeah.
Oh, for sure
naturally.
they do, but it's kind of balanced by how awesome the experience was, I'm sure.
I hate how my like, and I don't know if you guys got this from that experience, but I kind of feel like I was so overstimulated by the awesomeness of everything. Going to JoeCon, meeting all the cool peeps, seeing everything, being in America for the first time. That I think my brain, like, I have trouble remembering certain things from that event. And I'm so glad that we took so much footage. And when I say we, I'm so glad that Steve took so much footage of that event. And because like I don't know, like I just feel like my brain is burnt out in certain things, and I just couldn't remember them. It was just too much for it to
Well,
quantify.
fortunately, our entire experience is, well, as long as YouTube exists, is documented there, so we can always go back, Paul.
Thank God.
Whatever
I
we
will
want.
argue that it's not the entire experience.
'Cause some footage was lost.
Well, yes, that too. But also, a lot of the experience will be kind of locked in my private vault.
Yeah.
Not on any kind of footage, but just like I do have some strong recollections around that time, and that's for me.
Guys, can I?
Happy place.
I learned something the other day.
What?
And it's quite interesting. Yeah, I know we learn things every day.
Can teach an old
But
dog.
there was a
new tricks.
YouTube short, and this guy was just showing how to catch this one specific type of photograph in New York, and how it's kind of a rare thing, and it's kind of a little bit of a touristy thing. And Steve, when we were walking in New York, and the sun sort of hit the horizon, and it hit the buildings, and it just made it all red, and it was just really beautiful. We even got shots of that, and it's in the documentary. That only happens like 2 days in a year or something crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
How
because
special.
of course the buildings
Yeah.
are arranged on Manhattan Island in a very kind of linear grid pattern.
Yes.
So for the sun to have the exact angle to dip between buildings like that, maybe, yeah, no, true.
Magic.
To get a sunset through a very long passage of skyscrapers is not as easy as it seems. Or, well, it seemed that day. I thought, oh, this must be a common occurrence. It happens every
Yeah,
time.
we just took it for granted. Like, hey, cool. Great shot opportunity. There were no crowds, there's nothing. We were just like, wow. Take a photo.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that. But like, if you are a New Yorker and you're listening to this and you're like, you South Africans have no idea what you're talking about. It happens every single fucking day, man.
down here.
Yeah.
Like to have a sunset that dips basically on the horizon line. Well, not quite. You've got, I suppose, New Jersey out there, and a bit of the Hudson. I hope I'm remembering correctly which way I'm orientating the sunset. But yeah, to have a sunset like golden red, golden hour, right at that last moment between the buildings, pretty
It's a
cool.
special thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like
Anyway,
there was a lot of really
JoeFest
cool.
2023. What
Yeah, I
did
was
we
going to say
see? Mm.
there's tons of really cool stuff. I think Action Force had a bunch of cool new things
Mm. What did
that
you
they had
see
announced.
from there?
Wasn't there a new female character they announced? I wish I
Um,
prepared better. It was just
I
too
think
much.
Eclipse has sort of war paint. I think they called her
Yes, it
Warpath.
was. Yes, she reminded me of the character from Metal Gear Solid 5, I think it is.
They had an exclusive available for, well, you redeem them with clipping your action points. And that was a condor in a very Chuckles-esque floral shirt with like a blue undershirt. That's
Yeah,
pretty
that
cool
sounds
looking
good.
stuff. And of course, they had the resin, I think it's resin or whatever, the model of their new vehicle, forthcoming 6-inch scale, or for like 4-wheel drive Jeep, buggy. I don't know what you'd call it. I forget the name, but it can hold
SUV.
six. It can hold 6 Action Force or Action Force adjacent action figures.
AFV.
Amazing. And
That's
as
impressive.
it's been said, I listened to who did I listen to on What's on Joe Mind the other day, and they were saying like, yeah, in terms of a land vehicle, it will be able to balance your his tank. You know, it's a substantial 6-inch scale military themed vehicle. And so if you need something on land to, or if you need something on your massive classified series shelf slash Action Force series shelf, that will balance the his. Hopefully, it's going to be a very very capable shelf to hold all that weight. But yes, you guys gone? Are you still there?
No,
Wait,
No,
I'm just
I'm definitely still here. Paul is just amazed. He just
yeah,
can't get
I'm
over
just
how cool
quiet
everything was.
because I'm always worried that I interrupt you guys too much.
No, interrupt us. Please do.
I must plead my own ineptitude, my inability to find pictures, but the Operation Recall panel was a great hit. I watched it. I tried to re-find at least images that I have seen, because on the wall during the presentation and I think thereafter were the turnarounds of all of the figures, and
Ah,
I can't find it. But I backed Great White as my pick of the litter, but I think I'm gonna switch to Night Raid and Aussie, because
whoa.
for the first time ever we've got like quite a portly sculpt. In fact, Night Raid, if you're savvy and a GI Joe fan, and I know you are, is a better horror show from the October Guard than the horror show produced by Hasbro back in the comic 3 packs, because that horror show does not convey the heft that horror show should have. Whereas Operation Recall has delivered to us a big figure, like hefty, like he's got a big gut, and I love that. It's so unique in the O-ring GI Joe line to have like a guy who's thick, and Night Raid is such a figure. So yeah, he's unique.
I'd love to get
Also,
all of those.
Bengal
First.
has jumped out at me as well as being beautiful. Like the Indian sniper,
Yeah.
she's gorgeous. So yeah, there are new directions being pulled at me. And fortunately, if you have backed this project, or if you haven't backed this project, there will be ways of getting these figures. But that's still a long ways off. It's probably next year at the earliest.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going out of their way to make this cool stuff and then not make it easy for you to buy it. So,
True,
but
true.
I'm hoping that I can somehow acquire all of them. You know, purely because I like them and they actually get me really excited, which is a nice thing to have with toys. And also, it's just great to support something that I believe in as well.
It's what we as GI Joburg, and I'm sure the community, wanted Hasbro to get round to once they got over the damn main character hump of their
Yeah,
O-ring relaunch, which has stalled
exactly.
and has actually toppled into oblivion, I think. But yeah, we never got any new blood, any new characters out of it, other than Wade Ruthel, the backseat man for the Sky Striker, but that's of course behind a wall of exclusivity. As far as getting carded new GI Joe characters are concerned, Operation Recall, Call Sign Longbow, and now Delta 17 are your best bet.
Oh wow, these are cool.
Delta 17 had paint. It had sculpt. What would you call them? I don't know. Basically, they had the prototypes, and they also had
the artist proofs.
They had prototypes that were painted, and the paint, I have got to admit, in close up doesn't really hold up so well. It was a very gloppily applied paint, but I mean it's hand painted, so it's not going to be factory.
Yeah, those are just the show off samples, the prototypes. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
they're gonna look much better, I'm sure, when they.
These look so cool, man.
They are amazing, and it gets even better with the accessories. Like, it all seems very, very 3 3/4 inch O-ring, genuine, but it does things that we haven't seen before.
For an animal companion.
There is an animal companion. The one gentleman has, I don't know the names of these characters, forgive me. They're all kind of fairly new to everyone. But the radio man, who has the mohawk, has a sort of a radio pack that pegs into the frame of his larger backpack. But it uses the standard back plug port. So you can have him just wearing the radio, you can have the radio plugged into the larger backpack, or you can just have the larger backpack without the radio. So
looks like a small Alice pack that he's got. Sorry, like that it plugs into. Anyway, carry on.
Whatever the hell that is. But yeah, it's got all this sort of the hallmarks of O-ring Joe, in that you've got knives that sheath to the backpack. You've got visors that flip up and down. These pictures are courtesy of Scott Brown on Twitter, I must just credit. But yeah, they are very good-looking figures. Swords that sheath into the backpack and plug into a character's forearm by the looks of things. Nice. He's got a removable hand.
I think the GI Joe Classified line is really impressive from a sculpting point of view. And I think some of my criticisms about how weapons are stowed on the Joes themselves has been made quite well, or is quite well known. But it still blows my mind to see that a company like this, who is doing 3 3/4 inch O-ring figures, has found a way to mount weapons to the backpacks that are so much better than a 6-inch GI Joe. I don't know how they do it. I know how they do it because they thought about it. Thank you, Delta 17. Thank you. It looks
very good looking figures. Yeah. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Legends of the Hidden Force funded. It came down to the wire.
Oh God, I was too scared to look.
There's something that I wanted to mention about them and didn't get around to, and this is quite an interesting point in their favor, that the grips and clips are Lego compatible. So the way the swords connect,
interesting.
They have a post that is the same diameter as a Lego sort of aerial post. So any kind of rounded Lego.
Like a 3 3/4 inch. I mean, a 0.3 millimeter type thing.
Yes. So they have a plug point that allows you to plug one sword's base to the other sword's base to make that a compound weapon, or sort of a, I don't know what you call it, double bladed.
You know what else that means?
And that also means that the Kusari Gama, is that the sickle thing, also has a very Lego savvy clip system to its chain, and it's a clip system that would then link it to the handle. So it's all very standardized and universal.
It's changeable.
Yeah, the weapons can be fully customizable in that Lego sense. Very interesting.
Then, if I may add, if it's compatible with that size Lego piece, then it also means that it's going to be compatible with Gundam stuff, and that's fun. But there's also a line of model kits from Bandai called 30-minute missions, and they do these really amazing weapon packs and all kinds of cool stuff, like chains and like ninja weapons and things as well, that have 3 or 0.3 millimeter holes and pegs. So I suppose you could also reach out into that side of the world to modify your Legends of the Hidden Force or Fortress.
Your Lego figures are going to be well equipped from now on.
You're gonna have such badass just ninjas, dude. That's another
Ninjas,
toy line I'm
ninjas,
very excited
ninjas all day.
about. Ninja Lama.
If there's anything we've neglected to mention about JoeFest 2023, well, we ain't a fucking news channel. Get that from full force.
Yeah,
But
we
I
weren't
am
there.
enjoying-
We would have
Yeah,
loved to have been. But
I am
yeah.
really enjoying the coverage that I'm getting out of the guys who were there, our brothers from Order of Battle Pod, from Podcasts from the Pit, and also from Chaplain Assistance Motorpod. Thank you, gentlemen. I've listened to your stuff. Well, I've listened to the stuff that has been released yet. I imagine there's stuff in the pipeline from those of you who haven't yet released your episodes, but it's lovely to get this appreciation of the event from different angles and just listen to everyone's story. Good times were had by all. All right, shall we talk about comic books?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Did you want to talk about the Dragonfly, Paul? I see there's an image.
Oh, I
There's
just
an image already.
I just felt like with the last episode, it had like just funded, but we hadn't.
No,
seen the
it
pictures
had
yet.
not been announced yet.
It hadn't
It had
even
not
been
been
out. We had
announced yet. There we go.
speculated.
We were waiting for it to be.
Mhm.
We're still waiting
to
for
be
them to
announced.
announce that doc figure.
So now we have a picture. I've got a few things that I want to say about this design.
You love the
Um,
base.
We had such a cool chat about the Dragonfly and like cool attachments and cool stuff that they could have put onto this thing. And like, yeah, I get it. We're not like the kings of the universe or anything like that. But I mean, it's pretty typical. It's like, yeah, it's a helicopter with like bombs and stuff. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Steve. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm just a little bit like, it's very generic.
You're
I can't put
underwhelmed.
And yeah, I was very underwhelmed. I was actually sort of like low key hoping it was going to impress me and just kick me in the nuts with the awesomeness. And it may have even done that if the canopy wasn't so round. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I think they should have just stuck with a more angled canopy. I think it would have looked much better. But that
Are you
canopy
not
kills it.
impressed that they created a helicopter that's to scale with the classified
No,
characters? I mean,
no, I'm
you're
not impressed because
really.
Valorverse has done a vehicle that's to scale with these figures as well, and I'm pretty sure there's like 50 companies in China who've done the same thing. So I'm sorry, and I don't think the design is that strong. I think it's very generic.
So
I
you
don't
feel
know.
like they've made it more generic than the original Dragonfly?
In a lot of ways, yes, actually. Like, Bart was posting some pictures of the original Cobra helicopter, which the Dragonfly is based on. Well, when I say it shares some characteristics with it, and I'm like, why didn't they just keep the canopy the same as the source material? Because that looks so much better. But anyway, that's me. I'm speaking with my
It's more
money. For all of you-
sci-fi. It's more sci-fi.
Yeah,
Look at it.
I'm just not
It's
feeling
like more
it.
filled out. It's you're able to see more. And that
Well,
front
I
bit
think-
feels more like a cockpit. You know,
It's like a nipple.
it's like
Like
two
a pointy
pieces.
nipple. That said, I think the blast effects actually look really impressive. And yes, although I think the weapons and stuff are very generic, they are very pretty. They are very well made.
Blast
and I think
effects.
I think the guys who are going to be getting this thing are going to be very happy with it. And I think in a lot of ways, it's a very cool toy. It's not cool enough for me personally. I do think the Wild Bull, however, is a masterclass because that face sculpt is freaking amazing. And I get all of the Wild Bull vibes from that. I'm like, yes, they nailed the shit out of that.
So
but
now
everybody's
we
going to whine about something, So
Oh no, for sure, definitely. But now that we're kind of like into this already, I mean, and we have Wild Bull. We've got Ripcord coming. If it hits at Glenda, what do we think that next figure is? Is it Airborne? Is it Doc? My money's on Airborne.
The conventional
like
wisdom
to
on
be
this is that it's not going to be a major character that would get single boxed classified release. So that if you think like that, then they wouldn't put Airborne or Doc behind a paywall. I think we were foolish and in assuming they would in the first place, because that would be wholly unfair to fans of those characters who don't want to buy a $275 massive helicopter.
I
And
suppose
then
they haven't done that
cut-
before with the Pinto or Mindbender, so
Yeah,
No,
so
you
like
were
they've
able to
done
get
that.
them on their own. You didn't have to buy a Terradrome to get them.
but you can't walk into a store and get them. That's
Boo, Paul! You can't walk
Whoa.
into a store, no way, anyway,
Get
and
anything.
get any classified GI Joes. So
yeah, that's true.
boo
But
to our Southern Hemisphere suckers.
So you're thinking more obscure, Stephen? I mean,
Well,
hopefully it's
in the
not
same
another
vein as
pilot.
Glenda. I don't know if Glenda will necessarily move the needle for the campaign, but certainly the question behind what the third unlock could be will move the needle. This thing will fund to all three of its tiers, guys. It's far too early to be saying, "Oh
Oh, for
no, it's
sure.
slowing down. It's not going to hit the
At this
third tier." It's like
point, we're at 29 days. I mean, it's always a huge rush at the start to get it funded.
it's not even the
Um,
1st of July yet. People haven't been paid yet, guys. People want to make sure they can move
Well, I
funds
know that.
around.
I mean, based on the history, or at least what we've experienced, it's usually there's a huge rush at the start. People do
Mhm.
enough to kind of unlock at least the first thing to kind of like get a taste for like what's coming,
Not for
and
the
then near the
Rancor.
end. Well, for anything GI Joe, I
Not for
guess.
the engine of justice.
Not for that lightsaber from that chick.
Oh, jeez.
But
Not for Elmo.
near the end, I think there will be a huge rush. I think you're right. Will definitely hit all tiers. People, I mean, $280. Yeah, I think this is going to get huge. It's going to go. It's going to sell bumpers. Whatever the
I
term
agree. I
is.
think it's going to do very well. It's not crap. I don't like it.
To answer your
I don't like
question,
it
though, Rob,
enough
like
to spend that money on it. That's
Glenda tips Hasbro's hand a little bit, unfortunately, into showing us that you're only going to get repaints in this campaign. Like beyond Wild Bill, who is by rights all original part. Well, not maybe I don't know. I haven't actually looked at his parts, but he's an outstanding figure and looks correct. Glenda, you see, she's got throwing stars on her gauntlet, which is true to the original figure because it was a Scarlet reuse in Argentina. However, in a classified, update, if you're going to do the Glenda character right, maybe she shouldn't have ninja weapons. Being yeah, exactly.
Being our own
So
character.
we know that is just the prelude to the forthcoming classified, more classic-looking Scarlet, which I actually might be interested in purchasing. And I'm not a classified guy, but just to have a cool-looking Scarlet in a classic outfit, if that's around the corner, I would get that.
Otherwise, we're gonna get a green pilot snake eyes.
I'm gonna say a reuse of the Flash mold, like a Bombardier, an International Joe reuse of the Flash mold, because we've already seen Flash's weapon with Glenda, which tells us yes, classic Flash is also coming along the pipe. So they're going to use that same sculpt and tooling and construction for an International Joe. And I'm
well, I mean, now we've filled the cop. Yeah.
No, that's it. That's where I'm going with that.
Well, we've filled the copper now.
Smith had to say.
What did he say?
He was like, Hawk was all over the promo. They have most of the parts for version 1 Hawk, aka Breaker / Breaker, and they did a Mickey Mouse Cobra Commander. Hawk would be cool with a jump jet backpack. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's quite logical, actually.
Yeah, but I mean, as I was saying, like I think we filled the cockpit now. We have a co-pilot and a pilot. We have a dude for the one tread, and now we need someone for the other tread. Someone else to jump off or to fly off. So
good calls.
I'm hoping
good calls.
We get a dock. I still want a dock. I think
Doc's gonna jump off and fly. Well, that's something that I also wanted to raise, and
they haven't got a dock. Personally,
this is a point that Action Robot Punch made in his video review of the campaign. That it's a little strange on an attack helicopter to have the winch now moved to the side, because that's a sort of a rescue feature. Which, if you've got the hook on the center line of the helicopter, that can be used for sling loading. Not so much when it's off to the side. So this should be a helicopter that has internal space. If you're going to have a winch that is like a rescue winch on the side like that, they did it with the Eagle Hawk. No, they didn't do it with the Eagle. They did it with the Night Attack Chopper from the New Sculpt era. That was a cool inclusion because that did have a cavity for crew or for passengers in the back. So it was done well, surprisingly, in the New Sculpt era. And and then the Eagle Hawk moved it to the side, but then it was below the cockpit, so that didn't work. And equally here, we've got an attack helicopter with no internal crew space or passenger space, and it's off to the side. So
What are you winching?
it's baffling as to what the intention is with that. I mean, it's easy to see what the thinking is. It's a realistic-looking helicopter winch, but doesn't integrate well with this thing's modus operandi. Anyways, overthinking this, but thank you for Action Robot Punch for alerting me to
I don't think you're overthinking
weird
it at all.
design quirk.
I actually didn't realize that about the winch. I dislike it even more now.
Well, I picked that up. I realized that the
Paul,
winch was.
stop shitting on this campaign that you have no intention of backing anyways. It's a cool helicopter.
I'm a fan. I'm allowed to shit on things. It's what we do. No, I'm kidding, man.
Fans do.
Like I said in the beginning of this, I'm happy that guys are happy for this, that they're excited about it. I'm just not one of them, and I'm kind of glad because I don't really have $240 to spend on this. So
275.
Oh well,
before tax and postage.
Even less. I have even less of a chance. No, I'm not trying to be sour here. I'm just like, for that amount of money, it has to blow me away. And for me, it hasn't blown me away. But
it's
$240 for me is different than it is for an American citizen. So, yeah,
it's cheaper than a Dodge Charger with some flame effects.
There we go.
Think about that.
God,
like
this
GI Joe's HasLab team have managed to undercut the competition within their own company.
Yeah,
it's interesting, very interesting. So it's
balling,
and they have clearly established themselves head and shoulders above Star Wars and Marvel in backers fervor. Like this thing funded in 26 hours and 20 minutes, whereas other like vehicles from what should be objectively more popular, more massive franchises did not get off the starting blocks. So like Classified are on a hot streak, man. I want to see where this goes. I want to see how many collectors have to build extensions onto their houses to fit the fucking Classified Terradrome that they'll eventually make. Like, the sky's the limit, or our pockets, our own ability to purchase this stuff is the limit here, because the popularity of Classified is incredible,
through the roof at the moment.
It has been proven to be yeah. Don't
worry, soon they're gonna do something in this that's gonna blow me away, and I am gonna like froth at the mouth with excitement for it. So
good, you better.
I'm not a hater. You guys know me very well. I get very excited about things. At the moment I just have to be a little bit rational about it. That's all.
In the chat, Spoon Killer asks a very important question, one that I am very remiss in not addressing, and I'm glad he reminded me. He asks, are they doing a campaign for Delta 17? The answer is no. These figures are scheduled to come out at the end of the year and have not needed crowdfunding to do it. They've been privately funded and produced the way it should be, showing the big companies how it's done, basically. I'm looking at you, Hasbro. These figures are going to be available to us without any kind of upfront investment. So I don't know how they did it, what pact with the devil they made, or how they got it right, but the guys behind Delta 17 have done it. They are producing figures old school on their own.
Old school.
And all the signs point to yes, they are going to make it. Spoonkiller wants to know. He hopes that they will make it, and we all
they
do.
will. Yeah, for sure. I'm very excited to see this happen. Make it happen, like the October God makes things happen and disappear and come back for you.
Speaking of October God.
What?
Overish, my friends. So I tasked the gentleman with reading the first appearance of the October Guard in issues 6 and 7 of GI Joe, a Real American Hero. I know, right? And then the final appearance of the October Guard in special.
What a pleasant fucking experience!
Not special missions.
I'm not tipping my hand.
The October Guard's final, as of recording, the October Guard's most recent appearance in print has been in issue 290 of the IDW continuation of Larry Hama's G.I. Joe Real American Hero run. So my question to the both of you is twofold. Which order do you want to tackle these? And which order did you actually read them in?
Wow, that is a difficult question to answer. Well, part 2 is easy. I went backwards. Actually, I didn't go backwards. I read 290 and I read 6 and 7. That's how I did it. Yeah, I was like, I want to know the end of these guys' story before I read the beginning.
Did it color your reading of them in the early issues to know how they wind up?
To know that like they're essentially invincible.
Plot armor. No, to know that they're all alive in 290 does clothe them in plot armor, but there's a twist. There is a twist.
Also,
I don't think it did. I think it was just an interesting continuation of the story. I mean, it does change the way you do look at them, but I mean, in the end, they're a group of characters, you know, like long-time characters in a franchise. Some will die, but I mean, some will always come back. So in a way that some of them would always have had plus some sort of plot armor.
What,
Paul? Which order did you read them in?
Oh God. Okay. So
7,
when I first
6,
started reading them, so I read the modern one. Okay, which is
wait, same thing.
Wait, but I didn't read the whole thing. I read it up to a point. And then they like, kind of go, enough. And then they said, wait for it. And then they kind of like refer to issue 24 or something. You know, to 25. Real American Hero issue volume 24, Snake Hunt.
Volume 24.
Yeah, because then like I kind of see like, okay, cool, Dinah's been shot, whatever's okay, wait, hold on, there's something I'm missing here. And then I stopped reading it, and then I went and then I looked at issue 24 of Areal, and I was like, so what
volume
is actually
24
happening?
No, Paul.
Yeah, well, volume 24. So that so that must be the IDW, the new IDW 24.
Yes.
Yeah, because that was like, this has got fuck all to do with the like October Guard. So then I thought, okay, screw it. Let me just actually go to issue 7, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, it's actually 6, then 7. So thankfully I read 6 and 7, then I read the new one. Sorry, it was a long walk for a short drink of water, but I'm so glad that happened to me. Because if I had read it the other way around, I would have just been like, I would have read 6 and 7 with, it would have been tainted. It would have been so tainted. It's not like I don't know that they die. I mean, I know that. It's just, yeah. Anyway, shall we get into issue 6 then? Or should we get into issue 290? Because, I don't know.
I think we're going to do it chronologically because I don't want to view the lens. I don't want to view 6 and 7 through the lens of 290.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it does feel so far divorced from the purity of concept of the Soviet Union's answer to GI Joe, the October Guard. 290 shows you a development of these characters to a point where they're almost unrecognizable, apart from their designs. So let's do old school first for a change. Which, yeah, we do love that.
To fail to conquer.
I so delight in your summaries, Rob. So I'm going to call upon you to do one.
To fail,
mine suck,
to conquer,
apparently.
to succeed,
Sorry, carry
to die is the title of issue 6. So a experimental jet has crashed somewhere in the Middle East, and it's a Russian jet. And the GI Joes have been tasked to go and get the pieces of this thing back. It's been held by some sort of tribesmen up there, not like tribesmen in the cartoon, but like actual tribesmen. And GI Joe goes out. They go and fetch it, but they encounter the. Not only are they racing against the clock with the October Guard coming, or whatever the Russian people will be, they're also racing against Cobra to get this thing. Tons of cool action, introduction of a very cool weird vehicle in the comics, the rough terrain vehicle, the RTV. So by the end of the issue, though, even though they have the thing and they've had a very brusque sort of interaction with the CIA, they lose it to Cobra after a very hard fought fight against the October Guard, who've proven themselves the equals of the GI Joes. And by the end of the issue, Cobra's got in the anti-gravity vehicle or experimental vehicle, and the Joes now are left with the October Guard. And what are they going to do? What can they do? Find out next issue.
Okay, should we tackle it one issue at a time then? Is that agreed?
Yeah, for sure. Because also the art is a slightly different. Yes, it's by Herb Trimpe. It also plot by Herb Trimpe, but the inking is different. And actually, I would say I prefer his art on issue 7 as opposed to issue 6. It's a very minor difference. I feel like the inking is a bit thicker on issue 6. But I love it's not so thin, and I think the art is way better in 7, where you just kind of allow Trimpe's art to kind of his penciling to shine through. I mean, they're both fantastic. I mean, the way that he does panels, he always does. He loves doing these sort of like time movement panels.
Yes.
Especially when like Hawk appears on the scene. He's at the bottom of the steps, and he's halfway up the steps. And then he's at the top of the steps. He really loves the kind of like progression of time movement panels, and I always appreciate those.
On this read, I got I mean, I get something new every time I read these books, obviously, but I really enjoyed the atmosphere of the massive G.I. Joe plane approaching over the Hindu Kush Mountains. And it just feels cinematic and also like ominous. Something about massive, massive aircraft flying low and deploying paratroopers. It gets the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. It's very
especially after
stuff.
the reveal of the previous page, when we have a very mysterious agent within Cobra, codenamed Songbird, kind of like communicating with Cobra and telling them that the GI Joes are coming and this is their schedule and this is what's going on. And it is very like red skies in the morning, ship is warning, that sort of thing. They're not red skies, but it definitely does color what comes next.
You don't have to be coy, Rob. We are
it's General
fully
Hawk
going to.
is Cobra Commander's spy within GI Joe. It's who knew?
He has tipped off Cobra to the information that the Joes are approaching and where the best point to ambush them and steal the anti-gravity plane from them would be. So Hawk is selling his own guys out. Whether his objectives are aligned with Cobra or still somehow nefariously aligned with the United States and thereby G.I. Joe, he's still selling out his guys. He's fully prepared to make them sacrificial lambs. That is an angle of Hawk that quickly gets swept away. And we never hear talk of it again.
We never see it again, but it's definitely an interesting turn for his character. And then because of the cool time progression on the next page, it definitely gives you time to reflect on what has just been revealed to you as well. The kind of like slow progression of the jet coming forward, and the very like mechanical, reply, the dialogue of just like getting ready, get out, jump, go, and that sort of stuff.
Zooming out,
so good.
You did mention this, and it's something that we should speak on. This is a plot and art by Herb Trimpe again. Herb is definitely he's at the helm for this one. Larry comes in after the fact to add the scripting. So the exact words from the characters' mouths, that's all Larry. But the story that is being conveyed and the way it's being conveyed is entirely Herb's brainchild. So does that color your reading of this? To know that it's not a Larry Hama story?
I don't know. I think Larry Hama still does some of the storyboards, some of the layouts, like pre-scripting. Because if I go to the first page, it says it's got Larry Hama scripter, then it's Herb Trim plot and penciler. So I imagine that him and Larry Hama like sort of brainstormed because they're both illustrators. They might have brainstormed a few storyboards, a few shots together. I don't think it's all on Herb Trim personally.
Well, I mean, obviously they're both involved, but I mean, it's just cool that he allows, but it's just always been the Marvel method as well, to kind of like is let the artist lead the charge. You know, you kind of give them a general idea of what's going on, but definitely it's more on Herb Trimpe than it has been in the normal Marvel method, because he's coming up with the plot, and then he's leaving it to Larry just fill in the word bubbles.
Yeah, come up with the
I'm going to fight you on that, Paul. In terms of division of labor, I don't know if Herb would necessarily jointly plot this with Larry. Larry's off plotting the next issue of the series. These two issues, it's December of
4 and 6.
1982, and it's January of 1983. I'm thinking like maybe Larry took some leave, or he needed time to work out the next issue. So this is inventory in a sense. This is another Herb Trimpe. He had it up his sleeve. It's a story that he wanted to tell, and G.I. Joe offered that vehicle for it. I mean, it does open with a sequence that looks... I mean, it's got some fabulous, like, new, very interesting sci-fi-looking jets. And that just screams Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to me, big time.
Yeah.
Coming off
Steranko.
Operation Wingfield, I mean, it definitely the way that the panels are laid out, it definitely feels like a Herb Trimpe production, as it were. The way that he kind of lays everything out. I'm probably more on Steven's side than Paul.
I just know that for quite a lot of issues, if you guys have got the hardcovers of the GI Joe books, you can actually see a lot of Larry Hama's thumbnails and stuff for the pages. For the
I'm
writers.
sure he had suggestions.
If he
but
hasn't been involved. Yeah, but
in
like,
the end, those are suggestions. You know, I mean, you're not going to do your artist work for them.
But then for his Storm Shadow run, the whole Storm Shadow run, he did the pre-pencil, he did the storyboards, and another artist actually did the art, did the final art for it.
They would break that down. I mean, they're very specific about how they broke that down here. You know, they were like, but anyway, we're going into
we're laboring on something that's
production of
super
stuff.
important.
Yeah. So the RTV, very cool concept.
It must be remarked upon, the RTV, the rough terrain vehicle, is something that can be deployed by Shoot and then assembled by a 6-man team
within 30 minutes.
In 30 minutes to make this fabulous, like, articulated flatbed truck, complete with like multiple gun turrets on top and on the bottom of the cab. It's insane.
It's a far out concept, and it looks weird, but somehow it works. And he draws it so well, you know, in kind of like all the different angles of the vehicle.
The geometry of it's awesome. Like the perspective and the structure of it, it's very strong. Like that shot there, I call that the Tatooine shot, you know, for the Jawa Sandcrawler. That's what it reminds me of, but it's such a powerful angle, and he's really got such cool stuff going on there. And the visuals with the way that the RTV is standing out. And also, guys, I just needed, because I was trying to find this myself with my own research, but I couldn't quite find it, but I know it exists. This vehicle, I think, appears again in a modern G.I. Joe run around the Devil's Due time. I think it's in one of the G.I. Joe Frontlines issues, and it is a past operation. And it also has a CIA agent. I'm just trying to recall what the story is like.
If you're right, Paul, I would love that. That sounds amazing. To do a callback to this, because it is famous. It's infamous. It's a very toyetic looking design, and yet it's obviously never seen plastic. So, and people to this day will recall the RTV. So if Devil's Due touched on it, well, that's very smart.
I'm sure they did. I've got memories, because when I was reading this issue, I had serious deja vu, and not like, oh, you know, I've read this issue before. Like, wow, why do all of these plot points seem so familiar to me? I'm sure I've read them before in another book, and that other book also had a skeezy CIA man involved as well. In fact, I think it's the same CIA agent.
Okay, well, I hope you
Oh, no,
find
that's-
that book and you bring it to my attention, man, because
find
my
it. I
Devil's
will-
Due knowledge is a bit spotty at best.
I've got to find it, dude.
Mm.
I've got to get it in front of you, because I just it's the craziest thing. It's like a gap in my memory, and I was so hoping you would know. So I'll
Yeah.
find it.
I'll
Bros.
help you there, pal. I have an interesting color observation on this one.
Ooh.
The
Scarlet is depicted, at least in
Oh.
art, as having like cargo pants on.
Which I think is so cool.
I think it's great. I think Herb's intention was that she would have BDU pants just like the boys in this issue. She would have
it's more
her top off, wearing the kind of the bodice, but have bulky sleeves and also bulky combat pants. But the colorist has put her very much on model with the toy by making the kind of the color distinction between the bikini and the leggings. However, you can clearly see in the art that the intention is that she's wearing proper combat pants.
Yeah. There's another cool piece of art in the very beginning of this when they land in God, I almost called it Kazakhstan, but it's not
Maguire
Kazakhstan.
Air Force Base.
Not there, but when they land in the desert, when they drop off.
When they drop off.
When they drop off, right?
Wow.
Or dust off, I think it is. Anyway, they are surrounded by rocks, and and then the sort of rebels, they pop out, they reveal themselves, and a part of me kind of wishes that so in the previous panel you got all the rocks are like kind of this reddish brown color, and then we see on the following panel that actually no, these guys are just disguising themselves, like the Fremen. But I think it would have been so much. I understand the argument that could have happened here, but I think it would have been cooler if they just kept the rocks like rock colored, if you know what I mean. And then
It's kind of like a cartoon thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you
part
can
of the
tell
frame
something
is
is going to
gonna
move. Yeah, you can tell
Yes.
something's going to move because it's it's drawn differently.
It's intentionally drawn to draw your attention. Yeah, and it's very clever actually, because
Paul,
Yeah.
if you saw just the naked inks without the colorization, that's the intention, that you'd get that sense that there were these objects, but they weren't picked out in different colors, so no attention was being drawn to them. But I think in a funny book, which is at the end of the day aimed at kids still, I think this is fine. And even for adults, I read this when I was in my 20s, guys, for the first time. So I appreciated the heads up. And it still is
I think the
a
size of the
cool
panel
reveal.
as well. Yeah, no, for sure. The size of the panel. It's also so that you can go back to the last panel and be like, oh, that's what those were. Those were rocks,
extreme wide angle.
but actually people. Yeah.
Extreme wide angle and the same camera placement. So it's showing a passage of time, as you say. It's a transitionary shot. You've got the Joes stashing their gear and being like, oh, looks like we missed the drop point because the guys were supposed to meet aren't even here. And then all of a sudden, these rocks become humans. And it's like, oh, okay. Okay, they don't literally become humans, guys. If you haven't read this book, you don't know what I'm saying. But
They transform.
They are rockmen. They're like, what are they? Yeah, Motu
Rock
guys. How cool were those
Yeah.
figures, man?
Those are the best.
Those were the
Guys,
rarest.
Also, how badass do you have to be as a penciler and an inker to not Xerox this page? If you look at the top panel and the bottom panel and you play a little bit of spot the difference, you'll actually see that they've both been redrawn. They've both been drawn
This
from scratch.
whole page.
And the
has
mountain
that.
range as well.
The
Yes,
mountain
fucking
range.
insane.
He has
Different
redrawn
panels.
it each time.
Tuk, 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 tuk.
And I can actually, I would almost go as far as to say that, it's not like the technology didn't exist back then to do it. You could have just like had it printed onto Letraset and then just like, rubbed it off onto the next few pages. But I think there is power in redrawing it every time because, like a camera has distortions and dithers and things like that as it moves or pans across the scene. So, and our brains are wired in such a way that if something is too repetitive, we ignore it. But if something has subtle differences, it pays attention to that subconsciously. And I don't think Herb, sorry to call him just by his first name, but I don't think Herb Trimpe initially thought of it that way. I just think in his mind, he was always like, yeah, it's always better when I don't copy it, when I redraw it all the time. It's kind of his vibe. And yeah, it's crazy. This fucking book is so beautiful. Like a lot of the books in this run. Sorry.
Good. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Paul. Anytime I've tried to substitute in a still into a play motion action figure film, I know this is a lame kind of analogy, but yeah, if you substitute a still in, all of a sudden it's lifeless. It's too statuesque. It's too frozen. You know, it's stuck in amber. Whereas, yeah, redrawing these panels, it's the little imperfections and differences between the way the mountain range is depicted frame to frame that put your mind at ease, that you're looking at a piece of art, not something AI created.
Copy pasted.
But yeah, so the cool scene. Yeah,
the October Guard. Are they formidable people? Their introduction is quite bombastic with their very cool,
I love this one panel. Sorry, Steve. If you go to page where the Joes have just departed, so and it's got the one guy from I keep on it now. I want to call it Volkukenland.
Stop clicking on the mic, you rats.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get to the page so I can get the number. Sorry, guys. It's
where
pardon the click.
CIA agent.
And then there we go.
Chatting.
Yeah, so there we go. I love that whole thing there where Stalker's just a 2-bit line infantryman. He can't promise you anything. And he's like, he's a fighting man. So I knew you wouldn't understand. And I love
you
that.
Say, Osama.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I dig that. I think that's so cool. And it reminds me of like in Jurassic Park, Grant's like me. He's a digger. You know, like I love that kind of thing because it adds so much pathos to a character.
Is there any sense in talking about the interesting political dimension of this sequence?
I don't think so, because I think that was a very different time than it was written in. You know, Afghanistan wasn't poised as being, Kazakhstan wasn't poised as being a threat back then. You know, they were being threatened.
Afghanistan were at war with, or I should say, the Taliban, the Mujahideen, were at war with the Soviet Union. So naturally, America was in the shadows, assisting, and getting them armaments like Stinger missile launchers. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn historically. Challenge me in the comments if I got it wrong. But you know, you flash forward to 20 years, and America's back on those same soils, this time in the position of the Soviet Union, fighting against the Taliban. So the shifting sands of politics. Like one minute they're your allies, the next they're your sworn enemies. It's interesting seeing that the hand that feeds being bitten. But yeah, this is just like Rambo.
Yeah,
3,
I gave that absolutely no thought.
Yeah, good. It shouldn't. I mean, it's the classic case of like GI Joe getting assistance from rebels, you know, from the underdogs, and as soldiers seeing eye to eye, they kind of have a code of honor amongst them. It doesn't matter who they ultimately answer to or what their future might hold, but in that moment, they are, for mutual survival, they are, you know, working
Which
together.
serves as a little bit of foreshadowing as well, because when the Joes meet the October Guard, they're also enemies, but they respect each other as really badass individuals as well. But that warrior's
yes
code.
And no. Interestingly enough, and I love this, we're going to skip ahead a little bit to issue 7, but Scarlet does not respect the October Guard.
Oh no, she hates them.
She's extremely derisive of them.
No, she was fiddled with by a Russian in her youth or something. I don't know. She's very angry with them.
I think Scarlet represents a very realistic view. At the height of the Cold War, you know, these guys, they wanted to kill G.I. Joe. They wanted their blood. And now Stalker is able to do a kind of a face turn and now work with them. Scarlet's like, have you lost your fucking mind? I will not work with these guys. But Stalker's in charge of the mission, so what he says goes.
Yeah, but I mean, it definitely opens up a much bigger conversation about like nation versus nation, but then also who are the individual soldiers that fight for those ideals. it's not something I really want to go into, but I mean, it's a big thing. You know, I mean, it's where is the antagonism coming from? Is it the different ideologies? Is it the leaders themselves fighting over things? And how does that filter down to the individual soldiers enforcing these differing points of view?
Yeah,
I mean, this is very interesting.
And also,
once again, Russia is a global pariah.
Yeah.
So once again, not Soviet Union, Russia as a nation are the bad guys.
Yeah.
So it suddenly becomes like Scarlett's position suddenly becomes more rational. It's like she does
yeah, but when there's in the story as well, you need someone to have that opposing point of view anyway. You know, you can't just they can't all just go with it. It's like, oh, we're just going to work with the USSR, but they are opposed to each other. And
in this instance, Scarlett is Worf, always offering the contrasting opinion, always getting shot down by the captain.
And also,
I say we go in all guns blazing. No, Worf.
No, Worf.
I also think it's kind of worth mentioning that that this book was. I mean, obviously, this book is from the 80s. It's sort of, yeah, I know, right? Didn't anybody tell you, Rob?
No, I thought this was 2012.
2012, right? It's fine. Don't worry. We're catching you up. It's cool. It's not just a retro thing. So it's also a sort of a post McCarthyist America as well. And
he's getting
Scarlett,
political, guys. It's not just
oh my god, these big words.
Yeah, but also Scarlett I think comes from a very McCarthyist America. She's a young white woman, so she grew up in the suburbs. She grew up with that kind of thinking or that mentality that came from her parents or from her from society around her, where communism and all these things, like being labeled as a communist was like really bad, because then they came into your home and then like they took you and then they interrogated you and all kinds of shit, and neighbors were splitting on each other, blah blah blah. So she also has that extra bit of social conditioning to hate Russia.
Scarlett's more sophisticated than that, but in this instance, she's not wrong.
No, she's not wrong.
Were wanting to spill her blood mere moments before Cobra showed up, and now they want to work together. Like, that kind of knee jerk is a good reality check for us all, because we all want to see our protagonists team up with the antagonists to face the bigger antagonists. We all want that. We enjoy the dramatic tension of it, but she's just reminding the listener, the viewer, the reader, I should say, that this is a very unusual circumstance. That under normal circumstances, these guys would be at each other's throats, as they had
also
been mere moments before.
And I also think Stalker's coming from a point of view where, he's used to being marginalized. And so when he sees other people that have been marginalized, he also is a little bit more sympathetic to them as well.
I think he's just being smart about it. I mean, he is American. Yeah. He is a
we have to work together.
He's thinking about the situation as it is. I don't think it has anything to do with anything beyond that. We really are putting, ideas into these characters' heads.
Maybe.
Well, then
but it's just a thought that I kind of had.
Squarely into issue 7. Let me not dilly-dally any longer.
Well, I mean, I was just... Okay, yeah, keep going.
But it's quite a clever trap, actually.
Well, you were all butthurt about not being asked for a summary. Why don't you give us a summary for issue 7?
Cool.
Yeah.
So, let me just fire up the... Okay. So, GI Joe is now being forced to work with their greatest enemy. Not Cobra, but the October Guard, in service of trying to, save the mission. And they've got to go in and they've got to figure out like how to work together despite their differences. And they find, sorry, this is not the best summary now ever, because you kind of got me on the back foot now. Clown. And they are now drawn into the danger that is Cobra. And I think they get to join the October Guard as the October Guard faces Cobra for what feels like the first time. And now the October Guard will realize there are greater things that threaten peace-loving Russia more than the Americans. But how are they going to get out? How's it going to all end up? Let's find out. Let's talk about it. Let's get in there.
Did you get the sense that this was the first time the October Guard came up against Cobra?
Yeah, that's the feeling I get from this.
I once again I gotta challenge you, Paul, because it opens with a splash page of Cobra Commander standing in the foreground and the captive Joes and October Guard just before him. It's an artist error that the RTV in the background is covered in troopers that look more like Joes than Cobra troopers. I think they should have been illustrated to be Cobra troopers. Instead, they look like green shirt Joes. But yeah, we'll forgive them that. It is kind of in the deep background.
And Cobra Commander's tight bum.
Oof,
it's right there.
Wow. You bounce a coin on that. Anyway, it seems like from Cobra Commander's monologuing that he appreciates both G.I. Joe and October Guard as his nemeses from the respective nations. He says that how was I to extract the anti-gravity aircraft from hostile territory while harried by the two best combat teams in the world? I feel like he's been burned by both combat teams in the past. That's the sense that I got from this. That like while we've been seeing G.I. Joe struggle against Cobra in the past 5 or 6 issues, we could have just as easily had a OKTOBER GUARD comic book fighting Cobra on
that would be a great
Eastern
spin-off.
Front. Yeah, basically. Let's see what the October Guard were doing at the same time, because Cobra's plan is world domination. And within these first 10 issues, or at least the first 9 issues, Cobra is this kind of amorphous, mysterious global force. Where is their headquarters? They seem to have island bases and undersea bases. So it's very Bondian in its scope. Like, it's not domestic America. So it could be bases that are closer to Moscow than to Washington. So how does that rub up against the October Guard? Well, here we finally see worlds collide. Yeah.
Also, I love that nobody's got their hands on their heads. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, it's very very casual.
Yeah, they're all like crossed armed. I mean, at any point, one of these guys could pull a concealed weapon and just shoot him in the balls. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's interesting that they lead with the commander, but as we learn later in the issue, even at this stage, Cobra Commander is not against using decoy agents. So maybe this isn't Cobra Commander. Maybe this is just a field operative with a Cobra Commander speaker strapped to his chest, as we see later on in the issue. What I am interested in, though, is he kind of has variably got gloves and not gloves on his hands.
Yeah.
And this isn't the only time in the issue we see a naked Cobra Commander hand, and then just the previous page, a gloved Cobra Commander hand.
And it's not even yeah.
It's not an art error.
Well, it's not a colorist error.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
continuity error.
Yeah. Actually, the colors probably...
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to expand upon this a little bit. Cobra Commander's left arm has his kind of long glove on it. The right arm seems almost like it could have been at least penciled exposed.
But then it would upset the RTV, which we know Herb Trimp cares more about drawing all these things. Look at that gun.
Weird.
It's beautiful.
That he's got a one gloved hand and a one ungloved hand, but maybe that's how he likes to fire his gun. He likes to actually touch the metal. I don't know.
Yeah, shame. I think Herb Trimpe was like more worried about getting the gun looking right, and then just thought, okay, I'm just gonna put fingernails on this to help sell the perspective, and then only realized later, like, oh fuck, this is meant to be gloves. You know, when it went to print, when it went on,
I buy that.
Ran off to print.
I do love the colorist choice to pick out the straps on the Cobra Troopers in yellow. All of a sudden, I look at any Cobra Trooper I have, and I'm like, I want that color combination. Red mask with yellow straps. I think we got it in the comic book pack. Maybe. I do recall yellow straps at some point.
I've got a yellow strap modern era Cobra Trooper.
Right. Okay, well, that might be what I'm remembering then. Because it's a handsome kind of color combo, and it fits in well with, ironically, the Cobra Commander from the 90s, the Talking Battle Commanders.
Yes, yeah.
Because he's got yellow accents as opposed to gold. But this is closer to kind of an orange. I just like it. I like the way Cobra Troopers are depicted in these books. Very villainous. Nice.
That Cobra
He's got it.
Commander.
It still works. Well done, Paul.
I love it.
Well done.
Anyway, look back to the task at hand. We get to see one of the Vamp's coolest features. Sorry.
Yes. Not only is Clutch an expert wheelman, but somehow he's able to use like a VCR remote control to move the fucking cannons. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Wow. He's incredible. He must have like a third hand somewhere.
But they also
Stuffed down his
foreshadow
pants.
that. They also foreshadow that because they're all like, hey, he's all like, hey, Scarlet, want to come downstairs and play some Space Invaders with me? So they do have some foreshadowing, you know?
You'd be right in that Clutch is often taking passes at Scarlet, but I think it's Steeler who wants to play Space Invaders.
Oh,
with
shit.
her.
It is too. Fuck, they're all in
There's
green.
almost maybe it's kind of a like all the Joes treat Scarlet as a little sister, and Clutch, however, takes it to the next level and wants to date
I don't
her.
know. I think Scarlet's going to hashtag me too, but let's not go there right now.
I'd like to think it's just the kind of like she's the only female. We're not going to all try and get a date with her, but let's at least, I'd rather hang out with a woman and play Space Invaders than to hang out with you stinky bastards.
Yeah.
Like I've seen you guys enough. Let me schmooze with the redhead a bit.
Yeah,
I'd like
maybe
to think
can ask
that's
her for
what
some
it is.
dating advice.
But I also did read that panel as like, is Steeler also making a pass? Is that what's happening? Is everyone trying to take a turn with the token female?
Disgusting. Hey, fucking patriarchy. Am I right?
Shoot is dead.
Moving right along to Rat-a-tat-tat. And Rob, I completely steamrolled you now, man. What you were gonna say something cool?
No, I've completely forgotten, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. I love Dinah though. She's so cool. Yet Georgia is Soviet territory, and he's like, that ain't the Georgia that's on his mind, sweetie. I love
Georgia.
Or should I do it as like Stalker? That ain't the Georgia that's on his mind, sweetie. Like whatever. But it's just I like how there's a part of Dinah, and it's maybe I'm reading into it too much, but even this the way she's drawn, there's a part of her that's like just now they were trying to kill the Joes, and now she's like a little interested in like how they think, Maybe that's the soldier and her trying to get a bit of recon and trying to understand her enemy better. I don't know. Or maybe she's just naive. There's part of her that is naive every now and then. It comes out. Anyway, let's not labor on that too much.
It is naive in that she immediately jumps down Breaker's throat for saying, "Oh, we could basically track Cobra all the way to Georgia," and she's like, "Niet, you cannot track Cobra all the way to Georgia because Georgia is in the Soviet Union." And Stalker's like, "Hang on, sister, that's not the Georgia on his mind." So she is playing the role of the foreigner, the foreign imbecile. Unfortunately, this is a sort of archetype that she's playing the role of there.
Yeah, true.
She didn't pick up the subtlety of what Breaker was saying, but that's okay. I mean, effectively, we are speaking in English here, and the Russians are all having to speak in their second or maybe even third language, and they're holding their own just fine. I think. Like, Stalker speaks jive at one point, almost to kind of confuse the Russians, and Colonel Brekov has to translate for his men and women.
Don't you think that's cool though? Like,
well, it's an asshole move from Stalker, but maybe like Stalker in this kind of early blushing with him has these affectations that they quickly get rid of. Like Stalker becomes this warrior poet and he speaks very eloquently, but back here he would lapse into a very street style of speaking, which isn't military. So it's kind of a throwback to his early origins as like a gangster. I don't think he's necessarily doing it deliberately to lose the Russians. I think he's just slipping into.
I don't think so either. I think he's just been cool. Like he's just talking and like and it's just cool that Brekov is hip to his vibe, so to speak.
Shouldn't he be smarter though and be speaking in a more easily understood basic term? It would just make it less interesting to read, I suppose. But yeah. Like if you think about it too much, Stalker should be unveiling his master plan in very plain English. Instead, oh man, we almost got to read it. Who wants to read it?
Dag, lighten up and chill out. Let's not be getting our tails in an uproar here. I mean, the man done took his ball and went home. The game is over, dig?
Please to be translating and not understanding this. Like it's a great little humor turn, even if it doesn't make the best story sense. And yeah, the distinctions between the October Guard and G.I. Joe is thrown into the firm focus here. It's great stuff. Holy shit, guys. Like, I'm going to tip my hand and say this is exactly what I want from my G.I. Joe book. This kind of political intrigue, but Cobra being the big bad, but great character interactions between the protagonists, the antagonists, new characters, new memorable characters, except maybe Sturmovik and Shrage, who even the hardcorest of G.I. Joe fans, I defy you to try and remember which one's which.
So and then also Stalker just asserting his role once again as a leader. You know, this is not a democracy. You know, I'm point man. I want to get the shit done. Think that as well. You know, think where he's coming from.
It's an interesting situation where Scarlet isn't the final word. Like a lot of the time, Stalker is often a leadership character within a squad, but Scarlet seems somehow on a pedestal. Whereas here, it's clear that what Stalker says goes, in spite of Scarlet's objections. She can object as noisily as she wants, but at the end of the day, she's got to go along with it.
So this is one piece of Scarlet's characterization I really don't like.
Ooh.
It's one thing to kind of be like, you know, I don't want to support them, or hey, Stalker, these guys suck, or whatever. It's like, I don't dig them, or I don't trust them, or whatever. But it's another thing when you go, you can give them a hand. I don't wallow with pigs. I'm like, fuck you, chick. Sorry, but like, you know, the thing is, you can respectfully dislike somebody, and I think that this puts her in a very bad situation and puts her in a very bad light. It to me, it makes like all the stuff we spoke about a few minutes ago about her being the rational voice for the reader and all that stuff. That all makes sense until she does this, and then I feel like, no, you're kind of being a dickhead now. I mean,
would it be more acceptable if it was Steeler who was calling them pigs?
No,
not acceptable.
I don't think it would be acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable to call your enemy a pig in the first place.
So all the Joes are so noble that they're not going to have some hate for the people who would have brutally murdered them mere moments before.
I just think it's a bad move to call. I just think it's a bad move to call people that are as equally well trained as you pigs in their presence.
They're ideologically opposed, though. Like, this is a politically charged scene. Like, if the subtext running under all of this is the Soviet Union and the United States, everyone's ideologies are on opposite sides. Like,
I get that, but still, it's like, and Steve, maybe it's just because, you know,
in the eyes of the West, these guys are evil. They are part of a system that is evil.
Yeah,
You've been educated to believe that from, I don't know. We're doing that thing that we said we weren't going to do.
I know we're doing that thing, but like also we were raised in a country where we were also told to hate people because they were evil. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and so like when I read that, it annoys the shit out of me because I'm like, she should be better than that. You know, we're trying to move forward. You know, and I think
agree
like even if you hate the Russians,
an intelligent, very balanced, the complex character that we know as Scarlet should be better than that. But I am saying that someone on the Joe contingent should have that view, just to keep us in check. but I've said that already. Anyway, shall we
Yes, you
move
have.
on
I
to
just hate
more
the way that she
exciting
does this. Yeah.
things?
Sorry, Steve.
Then,
It's just like something that just really it made me very hot and angry when I read that panel. Yeah.
that it was the girl who had to be the cross bearer.
No, it's just that the girl seemed like a racist smug. That's what bugged me. Or that a character was a racist smug. But anyway, it kind of makes them realistic to me. So let's move along. There's the cool little interesting October mobile, whatever the hell that thing's called.
The Kremlin kitty cart, as Clutch calls it. But it's back on its balloon tires, and off they go. They encounter an Iranian border patrol because they've crossed the border into Iran. I love the tension of this sequence. They're kind of slowly creeping up on this border patrol. Breaker's like, he gets shot. I mean, and they just keep going. They sort of steamroll that plot point. Yeah. Once again, the passage of time in these sequential panels that are all laid out the same way. They're the same size. Masterful storytelling, very dramatic stuff. And the Russians disappear. Like, what?
Yeah.
Flash is craning his head around to look for them, and he's like, they were beside us a minute ago. How did they get behind us? But
And then
I guess we're supposed to think that the Russians have ditched them. However, they do emerge and pull GI Joe's chestnuts out of the fire. So yeah, it's a sequence of like faith being tested and faith restored. Like, did we trust the wrong guys? No, they came through for us in the end.
And
we've all spilled blood together.
But still love that cheeky little Russian line here. Is like they go, "Keep going, American skis. The October Guard will mop up the rebel." And then it's like, well, so much for one of their Joes is like, well, so much for Iranian American relations. And then one of the October Guards is another example of American imperialist aggression. And I love that because they're basically pinning all of these deaths on the Joes. I love it. It's like, you know, so I just think it's such a great panel. I was like, you cheeky shits, actually. Like, yeah. Anyway, I thought that was very clever. Anyway, if you want to, we can move to the next page. Paul just gushed over that page. Too much. Too hard.
And then Hertz keeps coming up with cool designs. Oh.
2001 Space Odyssey.
No, I was going to say, I mean, before these things ever existed, like a Terradrome and that sort of thing, he was coming up with like interesting concepts for bases for Cobra with this
these prototypes.
These prototypes and interesting stuff, which would eventually be fleshed out in the toy, in the toy line as actual things, their own concepts. But it's a very cool, like a little maze, like almost like Indiana Jones sequence that they're going to be going through in the next couple of in the next half of the issue.
Oh, and there's such a terrible line here, Steve, if you don't mind. It's the first Campbell. It's like, inside the Cobra stronghold. This is a night for celebration, my brothers of the hooded serpent. I mean, what is this? Is this a club for like uncircumcised men? What's the story? For not only have we defeated both the GI Joe team and October Guard, but we now have within our grasp the very seed of world conquest. Again, I'm like, dude, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but there's a few penis metaphors here that are a bit like, coming out of left field. But
there's also great allusions to Nazi Germany with the oversized Cobra banner in the background, the globe, the massive, massive snake. Okay, that's a Cobra affectation, but like the snake is oversized. Everything is gonzo, and it's
also very Raiders as well.
Very cultish, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We see hooded Cobra Commander long before the figure existed. Like it's all those cult symbols all rolled into one. The jackbooted masses. Like Cobra Commander is not lecturing any named characters. He's lecturing the troops at this point. This is a morale thing. This isn't a briefing. This is a pep rally.
I also enjoyed the sort of Spielberg Easter egg in this, and I think by the time this book came out, Raiders was out, in cinema, and so there's two like
Wait,
Spielberg
Raiders?
Easter eggs.
83.
Raiders, yeah,
Was it?
Raiders is 84, so this is still before
Whoa.
Raiders.
Yeah. Oh shit. Okay. Then
Shit.
okay. Hang on. Because there's a direct reference to Spielberg
Yes,
in the mouth of
with the snakes.
Stalker with the snakes.
Yes,
So this must have been after Raiders. When was Raiders?
and also the
I'm
podium
devious.
that. Yeah, and then also Cobra Commander standing on that podium and that whole setup we just discussed with the two sort of flaming braziers on the left and the right, that kind of cold
Mhm.
look, that is very much, I think, borrowed from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, I would say borrowed from Raiders and from Conan.
Riefenstahl film or newsprint from around the time of Nazi Germany. Look, I mean, the iconography has been around a lot longer than Indiana Jones.
Yeah, but there's a specific cultness to that one panel, like as opposed to it's got that cult and Nazi-esque thing working, you know, together, which I think we only saw in Raiders for the first time, where they married the two concepts together. You know, I mean, the hands being up and all that stuff, that's typical Nazi bullshit. But
look, the filmmakers of the 1940s in Germany were making films on that subject.
So maybe that's where it's referenced from. But for me, it just rung as a Raiders reference, even with the name dropping Spielberg. In fact, so much of this comic is so prototypical in a lot of ways for what would come out later for GI Joe, not only for the comic book, but also for the cartoon, because some of this little maze section here is something that we see in the cartoon. You know, it is something that I think when Sunbow was coming up with the cartoons, they were like, oh wow, there's mazes and traps and stuff in the comic books. Let's put that into the cartoon.
I think Steven Spielberg's a fan of GI Joe.
All right, Raiders of the Lost Ark was 1981, so yes, absolutely. This is hot on the heels of the phenomenon of Indiana Jones.
Sweet. I knew I wasn't crazy.
So this is quite an elaborate maze system that seems deliberately made to accept visitors into a death trap. Is that a break from reality? Do you quite like this sequence?
For what feels like it's meant to be a temporary base, it's a bit crazy, but I can buy it. I adds to the adventure of it.
Rob, you answer first because I'm gonna weigh in quite strongly.
I don't think it takes me out of it. I mean, it's kind of like they're prepared to just let people inside their base. It feels like it's a something designed specifically for the story, more than it is designed as an actual independent structure. So I guess I can feel the story necessity of it, but I don't buy it as like a freestanding structure that they would always build whenever they set up the bases.
But the question is, do you like it?
I think it's very interesting. I mean, it's just like the only way you can get in is if they let you in.
And then hit you with these challenges and traps.
It's like weird challenges. Yeah, it's like if they all just went to the top, you know, like why even bother letting them in? Let them try and all get in from the top.
Well, I'm gonna fly in the face of like my usual like demand for realism and these things to be grounded, and just say I love this. I love GI Joe sleuthing their way out of traps that don't require them to just shoot everything in sight, and it's something that we've now kind of lost in our more cynical, jaded, old man GI Joe stories, for lack of a better term, where it always does devolve into a gunfight, and the Joes in it, you know, the gunfight itself might be a realistic plot device, but the way the Joes are able to handle themselves in a firefight, like do acrobatic feats and not get hit, and just defeat overwhelming odds of guys who are equally armed, but somehow just don't have the skill to kill GI Joe, and GI Joe has the skill to kill them. Like, it becomes so dull to me, like so uninventive. Here we're seeing GI Joe being beset by traps and obstacles and having to find ways through them that are creative and different to just having a shootout. So I think G.I. Joe as a book has lost this playfulness and this comic bookness, which it does borrow from Raiders. It's fun. It's fun to read and exciting.
I gotta agree
The
with you.
scripting is good.
Yeah, man. Because when they were going through this whole section, I kept thinking like, this is before they invented the Terradrome, you know, and then it got me on like a trail of thinking of like, well, once they designed the Terradrome, all we got was like sort of subtle variations of the Terradrome, or we got the Silent Castle, and then it was like those became like the sort of mass-produced Cobra strongholds, so to speak, throughout the line. You know, I'm generalizing heavily because there are some like little pepperings here and there of some interesting locations, but I do love the adventure element here, and you know, putting well-written characters into kind of any situation as opposed to going, okay, guys, we're putting them into your favorite toy playset now, which I know seems kind of very counter, you know, for myself to say, seeing as I'm a big fan of the toys and things as well. But I do sometimes feel like that mass-produced side of the toys side of things kind of hurt the comic books in that respect. You know, it kind of hurt the adventure a little bit.
Happy Father's Day to members of the chat. Spoonkiller's got to drop out of the live chats, but he's wishing us happy Father's Day, guys. Happy Father's Day to you, Spoonkiller. Enjoy your day.
Hell yeah. Have a good one.
Right. So let's just skip to the end. G.I. Joe gets to the central nerve system of the base. They confront Cobra Commander and find the RTV with the parts and their vamp, which has been captured. It was going to be their escape vehicle, but now it's inside there. Cobra Commander is taken hostage by Clutch, and that's how they're able to escape with the RTV, the parts, the vamp, all the Joes in tow, and leave the October Guard behind. However, Colonel Brekov objects to this passage of events, and he's like, well, the only way to stop you from getting off scot-free with all the stuff is by shooting your hostage, aka Cobra Commander, who turns out to be life model Decoy. Did I miss anything out?
That sounds about right to me. They
The
definitely
epilogue,
get to the end.
The epilogue is the interesting thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
We finally get the answer to the turncoat Hawk.
Yes. Turns out he was actually still allied with G.I. Joe. He wasn't switching to the opposite side. He was just selling out his guys as a decoy while they smuggled the real anti-gravity craft parts out a different way. And he left Stalker and the boys and girl in the dark about this, which closes on a very ominous panel. Stalker and the guys are, well, the guys look shocked. They're all drawn with like round mouths. Stalker, however, looks pissed. He's got a furrowed brow. He's like, well, shit, I'm never going to trust you again, Colonel. I have to follow your orders. I'm duty bound to do so, but are you selling me out? Am I disposable? Like, this is such an interesting dynamic, and it never gets played out again, I don't think. Does
and
it?
Also Hawk's face. Check out Hawk's face. He's not happy about what he's done.
Yeah, he's not happy with this at all.
He's
he's
very
stoic.
disappointed with himself. Yeah.
No.
He looks upset.
I read it a different way. If he was upset, he wouldn't be walking away. He'd be like...
But he doesn't want them to see his face. He doesn't want them to see...
Well, look at also the way that he kind of... His response. He's like, you were the red herring, the decoy. Excellent work, team. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I read
reads
that
to
as
me
like...
regret. Yeah.
It reads to me as like cold, calculated company man. I'm not going to stick around for your response because I don't want to hear it. I had my orders, I followed them. You had your orders, you followed them. It's just business. It's the business of this man's army.
I feel to Paul as well. I mean, it feels like he feels like he didn't have a choice in having to order them to do it this way around, because he understands why it had to be done this way around, because if they didn't play their parts properly, the entire operation would have been compromised. Like if they didn't come across as completely believable in their pursuit of the gravity machine, that the operation would not have worked. So even though I think he is remorseful about this decision that he was forced into making, like he had to do it. It was his orders, but he doesn't feel good about it.
Bob Squad, he's got that "I did what I had to do" face. Yep.
Yeah, but it's also interesting that it is open-ended enough that you can read it in different ways. That Stephen kind of sees it as like, hey, I used you, and now you shall do my commands, Joes.
Suckers.
Look,
Yeah,
I think there, if he's sad or remorseful about what he had to do, I think there are more clear ways of demonstrating that in the art, like downcast eyes. But no, he's looking straight ahead. He has a clear conscience about what he did.
Look at his expression in the panel before. There, he's very angry.
Yeah, he's upset.
He's very like his eyes are definitely, his eyebrows are down. He's like confessing this to them. He's like, this is what actually happened, guys. And then the next page, the next panel, his mouth is still down, but his eyes have relaxed a little bit. It's almost like this deadpan stare as he walks away, and he and there's that pause. Excellent work, team. Pause. Excellent.
I also think it's worth comparing him to the CIA man who was smiling while fucking the Joes over. Every time he had
I feel like he
so every time, because he was like, oh, how does it feel knowing you got like, surprised by these dudes, and it's like, like you're just an asshole. And then later on again, you always see the CIA man. He's always kind of got like a bit of a shit-eating grin on his face, and I think that's supposed to show you the difference between these two kind of leaders, these two high-ranking people. Also, I love Ahmed. I love when Ahmed also like sort of says to him, you pretty much, what did he say to Storky? He goes, "Don't trust that one," because the second he saw us, he dropped his weapons and kind of surrendered to us, and was really.
And that's the difference between the CIA man who they kind of expose as being a bit of a pencil pusher, not much of a soldier, and here we see Hawk in his his with all of that hardware on his chest, like all his battle ribbons. He's clearly a soldier. He's earned his place, his rank, but he can't look Stalker in the eye.
Yeah,
because
he has to walk away.
Yeah,
but I also appreciate that it is ambiguous to a degree as well. That you can kind of sit here and we can have this discussion of like, does he feel bad about it or doesn't he? It's nice that these two issues allow you to think and have your own opinions about stuff, and
yet this complexity to Hawk's character doesn't really follow through. He becomes the kind of the granddaddy GI Joe, like everyone's Papa Smurf, basically.
But also, it's early days in GI Joe. This is proto GI Joe. I mean, the concept is there, the excellent storytelling, the focus on the military, the kind of the twists and turns. I think it's all there. But definitely, as the toy line gets more fleshed out, there is, I think, there is, and also with the cartoon existing as well. I think there is more of like a Hasbro, like there is a template that they not need to follow, but that is more like the heroes are heroes, the villains are villains. There isn't this ambiguity, this grayness to the heroes necessarily. They become heroes straight out. Like, we're selling toys here, the good guys, kids got to get behind the good guys. So I think this sort of thing happens less often later on, and so that's why you can have this kind of ambiguity early on before they become, the action figures, essentially.
Yeah, because it happens in a more subtle way as we go further on in the book. That kind of, and also like again, it's weird that Devil's Due is coming up quite a bit in this episode, but they did a lot with their GI Joe Frontline run and sort of. Some of the little things, and then even IDW in the beginning when they did some of the GI Joe Origins and stuff, they did a lot of stories, or not a lot, but they did a handful of stories that did kind of link to the past, like to Hawk when the original 13 were operational.
Mm.
And it does kind of give you a small window into him as a character a bit more. Like I feel like there were writers in both Devil's Due and IDW that kind of went, yeah, they also recognize what we're seeing now as well, as how dramatically the character changed. And I think they also want to kind of find a way to link that, you know, to kind of piece that together in the mind.
It's probably a very bold pronouncement, but I think the stories are more interesting where there isn't an attached toy line. You know, pushing sales and pushing the stories that kind of the type of story that needs to be told.
Yeah.
Which can be
agree
good
with you
and can also be bad as well, as we're going to see in issue 290 of GI Joe.
Well, this is definitely where, you know, like in the early run of the Joe book, you know, like I said, this is very prototypical because the toy line, I think, was like, you know, sort of just like hit shelves, and they were still figuring out the brand and the language of the brand.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why they
were
could
like
tell stories like this.
Exactly. And they were told, like, hey guys, you know, throw everything at the wall, let's see what sticks and what works. And then eventually, you know, when they made a lot of money, they were like, well, now this is going to be how it works, and you have to write within these constraints and create within these constraints. So that's just an observation, I suppose, you know, hindsight being 2020 and all. Not that it is actually 2020, because we don't know the full story of how that all went down. Before we jump into 290, just because we have been talking about a great vintage comic or retro GI Joe comic, or however you guys want to refer to it.
Retro.
Larry Hama's issue 1 is being re-released now. I think it's part of that whole Skybound thing. And yeah, it's actually the sort of Larry Hama cut. I'm of course making up that subtitle because I can't remember exactly what it is.
Director's cut, probably.
Probably some kind of, but it's because there's some lines of dialogue that were apparently taken out before they published the book. And Larry Hama reckons there's one piece of dialogue in particular that changes the whole narrative. And so this is definitely worth reading for every single GI Joe fan that exists and breathes. So when that book comes out, it'll be awesome to check out.
Is the line, we do the unspeakable and be forgotten?
Yes.
Is that the line?
Right.
I imagine it is, dude.
That was the line that was going to be inserted into issue number 1, but Hasbro didn't like the toys doing unspeakable things and being forgotten. So they changed it to, we do the impossible and make it look easy. Far more vanilla reading of that line. But that line did see print. It did see print in the IDW run. So Hama
there you go.
Circled back and inserted it later to do the unspeakable and be forgotten.
He did the unspeakable.
It was a moment in GI Joe history.
So now we have a fun... So we got the fun cover for GI Joe 290. It's pretty rad. I like the style. It's hokey, but it's fun.
Hokey pokey.
Which cover is that?
Hokey pokey. It's the one with the October Guard in, and they're all drawn in a very stylized manner. They've kind of got this almost caricature-ish look to them.
It would be the Heather Vaughn cover. Cover B.
Oh my god.
Yeah. There we go. There's
a sit rep that has been provided for us on this.
So we don't even have to invent our own summary.
Thank God.
And it is a summary for this issue, and not just a block summary for the story arc. So I shall read it. They are an Eastern Bloc legend. They've gone toe-to-toe with G.I. Joe and Cobra more than once. They've even stood side by side with their American counterparts on occasion. They bring serious heat to the Cold War. In more ways than one. They've celebrated victories. They've suffered losses. But somehow they've remained intact. But wait, how? After said losses, have they remained intact? This month, open up the top secret dossier, remove those pesky redactions, and find out the long-awaited answers in Spotlight, October Guard. The plot is the October Guard, to a lesser or greater degree, are cyborgs.
Yeah.
One of them is 100% robotic, that being Horosho, and his parts have gone glitchy. However, the parts are supplied by Revenge, and Revenge now have stopped supplying to Russia. So they have to break into a Revenge facility to get parts to fix up their beleaguered Horosho and others. I mean, everyone seems to be coming apart at the seams on this mission. So they conduct a successful raid at Revenge Technologies headquarters, or one of the headquarters, get the stuff and get out. The end.
you
But
go.
what the fuck? What? The October Guard are cyborgs?
Yes.
How did that
Yeah.
strike you guys?
Yeah. I was like, this is some bullshit. And you know what? Okay, so if you go right to the very beginning of this book, and they're in there, and there's a thing where they're speaking, and they're like, "Don't tell Horosho he's a cyborg. Let's have this conversation right in front of him, but don't tell him he's all robot." He's right fucking there. How is he not hearing this conversation that they're having?
It's a helicopter. Wait, it's not a helicopter. It's a car. It's very loud.
I just think it's so ridiculous. Sorry.
You'd be correct in saying it's a helicopter and a car, because they seem to have a flashback imposed on this sequence, which is very similar to the sequence, which details them withdrawing from Sierra Gordo, where they sustained their injuries. This is before they get replaced with cybernetic parts.
Yes.
It's just so confusing, because they talk about how you can't let him know that he's died and that he's like a cyborg, because it'll overrun his AI. But they're having, like I said, they're having this conversation right there by him. So then you think, okay, wait, never mind. Okay, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Horosho is clearly deaf. Okay, so then Horosho doesn't know he's a cyborg and stuff. Then I'm like, okay, that's kind of an interesting thing to do. And then later on in the book, he full on knows he's a cyborg. So what the hell's going on in this book?
Why even mention?
It's the Ghost in the Shell thing, though, Paul. That's what they're trying to do with this book, that he is 100% cyborg, and yet Revenge should therefore be able to just switch
Control
him off.
him.
And yet his some kind of remnant humanity allows him to overcome the Revenge equipment and his programming, and he's able to save the day in spite of being 100% a robot. So is there a spirit there? Is there a ghost?
Oh, it could be one or the other.
I just got confused with the kind of logic that they were just trying to put across here, because I totally get those concepts, because I love those concepts. It's a very strong sci-fi concept. It's just, I just feel like the writers had this great idea, but I think the execution of it in those first few panels was so poor.
Yeah, it's clunky. Okay.
Imagine
that they're whispering to each other.
Yeah,
but maybe they're whispering. Yeah,
you are desperate to say something, Pearl. Go for it.
Oh no, I was just. I had such a good line to start this with, but anyway, damn it. What's also clunky about this is that she's lying on the floor, and they're like, "Oh gosh, she's dying," and then suddenly you have the Superman panel, of where he's. Horosho suddenly holding Dana in his arms. He's like, "Oh, she's dying. We need to save her." Yes, I mean I think that was the first use of it, but obviously it's been copied millions of times after that.
Yeah.
Then the next time we see her, he's thrown her back to the ground, and they're all holding her wounds again. So he picked her up. He was like, "No, she must not die." And then, okay, get back down on literally the next page.
At the end of the ground.
Page. It's like, you're not paying attention to what you like. Yes, you really wanted that standout panel. Like, he's so sad. He's crying his electric sheep tears.
Yes, exactly.
By Andrew Lee Griffith. Sorry, Andrew. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus like that. It's beautiful art, but yeah,
it's absolutely gorgeous, but
doesn't make logical
sense. It doesn't
sense.
make sense, unfortunately.
You don't pick someone up who's bleeding out of their stomach
and just laying them down again.
Back down
again.
Weird. That is strange, and it did also arrest me as well. Let's not give this thing a diatribe. Let's try and pull some positive out of it. Paul, you've been outspoken on the subject, but is there something really
That you
good
like?
that you'd like to pull
Yeah.
from this?
I will say, and I'm being like, it's going to sound cynical, but I'm really not being cynical. I generally find everything in this comic book that isn't bright blue colored is actually quite fun to read, despite the clunkiness. Okay, it's when we get to the Revanche stuff that for me it fell apart. So everything before that had me so invested. I was like, yeah, actually, okay, cool. The October Guards, October Guard are robots now, or cyborgs now. Cool. It's like a hokey idea, but I was being sold on it, and I was like, this is really good. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, and they kind of seem to be a lot friendlier with GI Joe now, which is great as well. And Horror Show. In the back of my head, I was also like, yeah, well, Horror Show could have his whole like decade moment, where he's gonna figure out that he may or may not be a replicant, and that's cool. And then he's still doing the right thing. He's still doing the human thing and whatever. And then when it gets to this highly advanced cybernetics like thing, the Revanche, they seem to be very technologically superior, and they have all of this great knowledge and intelligence. But then they also have silly
Ineffectual.
weaknesses. Yeah, it's like they've never watched movies before.
Flamethrowers, RPGs, and AK-47s, antiquated weapons seem to be more than a match for everything that Revanche throw at these guys.
Yeah, there's like laser swords and the ultra mega, what's he called? Quantum Eradicator.
Quantum Eradicator.
And then
which
also
is a
you
cool
got,
name
like-
for a very disposable bad guy. Like he's
Yeah.
disposed of in the same issue that he makes his debut.
We
Also,
shall flatline all their systems.
I also get that like Dinah's had like some shit, but there's also like a weird continuity there because like now she's with them and she's got a bandage over her head. So, and it's weird because I thought she like pegged. I don't know. I was just confused about
She
sort
was
of how she got to
wasn't
that point.
dead, but they put her into the tanks. So they were fixing her, but she hasn't been cyberized. She's been fixed in another way by the advanced healing technology of the former USSR.
And I feel like such a boob for just like not getting that. Yeah,
it's a massive leap for anyone following the series. I can assure you, gentlemen, that like there's no additional information really. Like this is what you get. This is the gigantic explanation episode issues, I should say, for why the October Guard somehow waltzed back into continuity after being, well, at least narratively, definitively killed off in special missions. Like the trope of like if you see the body, that character's not coming back. Well, we see the bodies of Sturmovik and Shrage both dead on a switch track for a train. We see their dead bodies, like eyes open, mouth agape. We see Colonel Breckhoff and Horror Show get vaporized by an explosive. That looked pretty definitively going to kill them. Yeah. So, like, this is a retcon, and Larry has been on record saying like his entire run on GI Joe is a retcon of itself. Like it's always going to be wet cement. So this is it. This is your one issue explanation of that retcon. Yeah, I don't know. It's perfectly comic book hokey, but
what they introduce in the issue, I mean, they use that information and they go with it. So I mean, at least internally, it's consistent. Probably my favorite thing about this issue is the little sequence where the ultimate Eradicator gets taken out. The art is so good, where he's burning hot, and then they kind of like douse him in the nutrient fluid or something, and he kind of he solidifies and he completely breaks apart. And it's gorgeous art. Like it's really beautiful to kind of see him like coming apart.
Yeah, like I also love the fact that this issue is about the October Guard. Like it was cool.
It's just cool to see them kind of like running around killing robots. I mean that's.
And I'll also say that out of all of the modern issues we've read, this has been my favorite.
Yeah, it's self-contained. It's neat.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, then I think it's time to rate these 3 issues.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that's a 5 from Paul for 290.
Oh yes.
Shall we start with
5 out of
290?
them.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. What do you think, Paul? You're going to give it
I'm
a
gonna-
3.5?
No, I'm gonna give it like a 3.
Whoa. High
Yeah.
praise. It's a bit too much to swallow. Like I suppose not within context, but within like the broader context of the technological place that GI Joe is in the latter 100 or whatever, it would probably make more sense to me. But to me, I can't accept this issue. It's too much to kind of like take in all at once. And I got to say, I wasn't very well entertained by it. I mean, it's cool that it's a one shot, but I can't jump that shark. I mean, my shark's not jumping over this.
You
I
go,
guess.
Fonz.
Yeah, I'm probably going to just give it a 2. I think just to be consistent with my past self and just keep giving the later issues like not very good ratings.
Well, until they deserve something better than that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why I
mean,
gave this one a 3.
I can't get on board with this. My shark is definitely staying below the water.
Also, like, this, I don't know if this is like an important factor for you guys, but I was also upset that after reading this comic book, I didn't have any October Guard figures to reach to play out some like scenes. That was kind of a bummer
as
for me
comic
as well.
book original characters, along with like Dr. Venom and that.
Yeah, but jokes aside,
they
I've
were
got a
never
blue
going to
ninja.
get toys. Yeah, you have a blue ninja, but I mean, yeah,
I've got one of those.
Yeah, they were comic book
know.
conventions, I mean, so they were never destined to have toys. I mean, obviously after the fact, Hasbro should have picked up on like, oh wow, these characters are quite popular. Maybe we should actually convert them into figures. But yeah,
Well, they
never
did. They did eventually. The comic
I
3
just
packs
don't
you
have
can
them.
get. Yeah.
yeah, but
And they're probably the most sought after of those comic book 3 packs, so they will command a
Of
higher
course.
premium.
well, there we go. So, but I mean,
But
that
Paul,
means
let me
that
put you out of your
can't all
misery. Those
own-
things have tiny heads, so they'd bug you anyways. Like,
Yeah, and the modern era line is like, it's like it's either you buy the modern all of them in modern era, which is great, or you buy a
yes, of
Ferrari.
course.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
Mm.
So, Stephen, are you giving this a tiny score, a big score? Are you?
I'm with you,
excited
Rob.
to see the end?
It's a 2 out of 5 for me because of the unfortunate like potential that this had. Let's bring back the October Guard. Let's do a story focused on them, showing their origins, but let's get them to do exactly what GI Joe and Cobra have been doing in previous issues, and have them go up against Revanche in a Revanche facility, fight the same fights, but it's just the October Guard are our avatars instead of GI Joe or Cobra. It's like,
yeah,
come on,
Boring.
narratively,
Yeah.
this is the same stuff as we like. I guess I bring that lens. I had read the run up to this point, so this trope, this plot line of infiltrating a Revanche facility is something that we'd seen play out a number of times. Now we're just getting the October Guard to do it for slightly different reasonings. It's a wasted opportunity. And so it's an unsatisfactory backstory or retcon. And I don't like retcons to begin with. Like,
yeah.
if you made a mistake, own up to that mistake.
Own
if you
it.
brought back characters because of fan service reasons, because people were saying, oh, bring back the October Guard, bring back the October Guard. Whereas, they don't remember that the October Guard were definitively killed. So whether it was an actual Larry mistake or whether it was just a kind of a, whatever. People want these characters. I'll give them these characters. It doesn't matter. Like I'll fix it later in post. Like whether it was an error on his part or not, they're back. Let's do something interesting.
I unfortunately have to be that guy again and keep harping on the poor lady. But they have a research specialist. She
might have been brought
were they
on
not
after
around back
the
then?
October. No, I think
then that's
Diana
probably why.
might have been brought on after the October Guard were brought back. Maybe I don't know.
Well,
Okay.
she's credited in this book, so
Well, then
Yes,
that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
She's
Yeah.
keeping it up to date. Like she probably brought up the fact, hey, the October Guard came back at some point, didn't they? But you killed them off in this previous issue, Larry. What's going on? And then Larry was like, okay, I guess we gotta do an issue about it.
I think it was the fan response to Sneak Peek waltzing out of the dead that prompted IDW to hire Diana to
Which was a
just
good move on
tabs
IDW's
on
part.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it
I
definitely
think
helps, especially for someone who lives in the moment. You know, as we keep saying, Larry does. Like he lives
yeah,
in the
shit.
story
Why
that
would he
he's
want to
currently
read his own
telling.
stuff? Why would he want to
Well,
read?
that's the thing.
I
You know,
wouldn't.
like it would be. It's beneficial to have someone that does know like the history of GI Joe to kind of like not temper, but be like, okay, if you do that, then it's going to conflict with this. At least it kind of like it helps with the people that do care a lot about the continuity. So it's a good thing that she does. She is there. She was there to help out.
I would love to see the version of this comic book where the October Guard are going into this revenge facility with, they've asked for GI Joe's aid to raid a revenge facility to get the technology to repair themselves because they have turned their backs on Russia, on the current like whatever leadership is in Russia, because in this book they do say that like, oh wow, Russia has technology that we don't even know about. So then, but now Revanche is pulled out of supplying Russia parts. But like, Russia's resourceful, dude. Like, I'm pretty sure that they came up with the stuff, before. So whatever's. Anyway, I think it would have been a more interesting story because now you could have an October Guard that's actually on the run from Russia, or you could have them on the run, from the new October Guard who's probably trying to eliminate them now as well, and because they know so much. And those could have been way more interesting characters, and then they could have actually introduced a fun spin-off book, or just brought in some deeper like elements, and given us maybe a visual break from, like given us Revanche, but then maybe alluded to the fact that there's something bigger to worry about as well. But hey, whatever, like that's how I see it going down. That doesn't mean I'm right. It's just that's what I imagine could have been quite entertaining for me. So,
what I think an interesting story to tell would be our ratings for 6 and 7.
Yes.
Whoa. Hey,
well,
Rob, do you have that spreadsheet to hand?
I absolutely do. I'm always, I've always got it around.
Gaz asked, are the October Guard like the Reavers from Uncanny X-Men? If I'm remembering correctly, didn't the Reavers have that guy who was like a tank on his lower half?
I keep wanting to say Sebastian Shaw, but it's not.
No. The Reavers were like cybernetic. Just get put back together and fight again. I think Lady Deathstrike was
one
allied
of them,
with
yes.
them. But yeah, they definitely had that tank dude. I think became a Marvel builder figure. But yeah, unfortunately, Horror Show didn't have the bottom half of a tank.
That would have been, Horror Show is so cool though.
Who knows? Such a cool, Skybound Limit.
So we have omitted tanks for the memories, number 5. We need to circle back and do that one. We'll get it
for sure.
Circle our tanks, as it were.
Later episode. But 6 and 7, I'm going to give the same score to both because they're both equally excellent. 5 out of 5.
Stephen is in love with these issues.
Yeah, I'm going to echo Steve's sentiments on that as well. I thoroughly enjoyed reading those books. I thoroughly enjoyed the art. The fact that we spent about an hour and a half, even a little longer, just getting into the nitty-gritty of everything in that book just proves why it should get 5 out of 5. It's that good. It's like a good movie.
It's like Operation Wingfield. I mean, it was to work at that for 2 hours. There's no ways we weren't going to get high scores.
Oh, dude, I'm so glad you mentioned Operation Wingfield because I read the letters page for episode 7, for issue 7. And guys were like praising what they were doing with Operation Wingfield and the storytelling. They're like, this is some of the best storytelling in comics ever, blah, 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 etc., etc. I would like to, I'm looking forward to our letters page episode in the future.
Fascinating.
Where we get to like refer to some of our favorite letters comments. Because that is like, that's big research. That's something you can't like cook up in like 2 weeks before a show. You have to like consistently have a spreadsheet or something keeping aside your favorites. So
6 months at least. So get back to us in issue 485.
Yeah, so like I'd even say for our listeners, hey, maybe join in on the fun and start collecting some of your favorite letters from the letters pages. And I hope you guys are sort of doing it here and there as well. Nobody's expecting you to have 50.
I've got a spreadsheet.
I looked forward to the letters pages and kind of wanted to we just ran out of time, basically. Responses
Absolutely.
to these two issues would have appeared in perhaps issues 9 and 10. Letters pages.
Yeah, that's why.
Anyway,
Fascinating.
That's why it's going to be cool. Just like keep it
just
like
kind of
have a-
revisit our favorite issues. With,
Yeah,
with
just
the
have a
letter
note.
pages.
Yeah, I'm keeping like what I've done is I've got a little like sticky notes thing up on my computer, and then I will see a letters page that I like from a specific
You're
issue.
like,
So I've got the
"Doo-doo-doo,
issue
Burt
and the
Reynolds
letter.
said this."
Yeah, Burt Reynolds said this. He's like, "Wow, Dolly Parton was amazing in this. Nobody knew I was gay at the time. It's all good." And
we
then-
have absurdly high ratings for this early
Oh,
run.
we absolutely love the early run. If you compare that to the, if I can get there, if my computer would stop.
Well, we're still creating what's the word? A control, you see. So what's going to happen is we're going to encounter those issues that aren't going to be that good, 3 out of 5. And God forbid we'll actually encounter a modern era issue that can like crack 3 or 4. Wow,
Can you
that
imagine?
could happen.
It's going to be
Can you
awful.
imagine? I
Well, we'll
almost want to
definitely
throw us. Oh, sorry, Rob.
No, I stopped when you said a cool line.
I was going to
Finish
say
your cool line.
I would love to throw a spanner in the works by making us do a cover to, or like making us do a small review on the GI Joe Origins series that IDW did at one point,
Wow.
which I thought was really awesome. And I know
You're a
that
wild
it's the
man.
kind of thing Steven hates because it's kind of like retconning certain things. But
You're an absolute wild man.
I
We'll
appreciate
get
the
there.
effort.
We'll get there
We'll get there.
We will
in about
definitely get
5 years.
So,
Right, gentlemen, I'm gonna rinse through some new shit that I acquired.
Yes, please do, because I want to
Ooh,
talk about a cool new thing
please.
as well. Yeah, so
there. Yes, I want
Yeah.
to hear about all your cool new shit. Show me pictures, Steven.
It's Father's Day, or it was. It's
Well,
now
happy Father's
Monday
Day.
morning for me, so I got myself some toys to
Monday morning for me too.
make me a
Whoa.
happy lad.
Me too.
The anti-gravity pod, Destro's
HEP.
flying. It's something that didn't see release in South Africa, so I wouldn't have had an actual plastic awareness of it, but I do recall it from A, the video game, and B,
Mhm.
a coloring in book that I had around that time. I was like, what are these things? So yes, I have held off getting it for the longest time because if I don't have a nostalgic connection to it, it's not high up on my wants list. However, as a fan of the video game and it being a sort of a mid-level boss, I did want to get it just for that collection. And I must say it's all right. It's kind of a middling vehicle. The design of it is fun without making a whole lot of sense. It looks futuristic and Destro-ish. It's in that red and black, which is always a handsome color combo with the gold accents. It gives the Iron Grenadier some air power. Is it a helicopter? Is it a VTOL? Well, is it a jet? It's kind of all three of those things and none of those things. It's its own thing. It is an anti-gravity pod. What is the anti-gravityness of it, do you say? I mean, if it's a VTOL, then it's not anti-gravity. But if you think about it, if those engines tilt down, as they do, and blast straight down, they're going to be blasting that lower wing surface.
Mm.
So my explanation is, and this lines up very nicely with issues 6 and 7 of GI Joe, is that Destro got the anti-gravity technology and pioneered this craft. So those thrusters aren't used for vertical lift at all. That's used for forward propulsion. This
Yeah,
thing,
speed.
like a Star Wars repulsor lift vehicle, has anti-gravity technology in it. It can hover. And that's why it doesn't have landing gear, because in a kind of a powered down
in subspace.
neutral state or passive state,
Just
it
float.
hovers, it floats just off the ground.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like a TIE fighter.
How's
Or like
the
a maglev train.
yeah? How's the gold plastic holding up?
Fine, perfect. It's pretty hardy. Yeah, for whatever reason, like they'd figured it out by then. It's
Yeah, that's
more,
like the brown. That's more brown plastic, if you know what I mean. Like gold
Excuse
brown
me.
plastic.
it's more of a waxy kind of plastic. It's not the hard plastic that would have gold plastic syndrome.
It's like the
so-
spoiler has the same thing.
That's good to
Yeah.
hear.
Also, I got this obviously secondhand. Obviously, the seller said it was dead mint. Obviously, the seller's just giving me sales pitch. It wasn't dead mint. It was pretty
Those
scuffed.
liars.
And the front, like the black part of the vehicle is two halves that get clipped together. The front wasn't clipped. And I was
Son of
freaking
a
out
gun.
because a broken clip at that point, the vehicle's had it, basically.
Tickets.
You'll never
Yeah.
get those two halves to meet. And that becomes problematic because then you'll never get the canopy to lock down. The canopy has a
Yeah.
tab that gets inserted into the front. And if there's a split there, that tab won't have any friction. So it'll just keep popping open. It'll just keep, you'll invert it and boop, canopy will flip open. It doesn't even lock down. It wouldn't even kind of there would be a gap. So 30-year-old toy, I wince, I close my eyes, and I apply pressure to the two halves, and it takes a lot of pressure, but I hear that click. I'm like, did I break it? I try pulling it apart. Nope, it's not broken. The plastic was still okay. For
Thank
30 years,
goodness.
Apply
for
some
30 years,
pressure.
that clip has been bent, and yet I was able to click it together, and it has engaged itself, and it is now locked. Touch wood, it will remain that way.
Beautiful.
I also have bat fever running through my household at the moment.
Bottom.
This film might be an absolute turkey. I mean, reviews say that it's kind of middle of the road. It's not going to blow up anyone's.
And Keaton isn't in it enough, apparently. But
Oh no! Well,
Sorry about
I've
that.
been rewatching Keaton Batman, and fortunately, at Big
I'm
W,
Batman.
which is Australia's answer to Walmart, we have the Spin Master like basic 3 and 3/4 4-inch toys,
That's so
and they've
cool.
got the Eddie Batmobile for like $24 US. I got it for 35 Australian, so it's cheap as chips. Comes with 2 figures, fits one. I had to carve out the seat because the damn it does this irritating thing that so many Spin Master vehicles do, and that's the character basically
Spins.
it lies flat inside, so it
Hmm.
completely disappears from view. And I'm like, no,
Hmm.
Batman needs to sit up. You need to see his face
That's a
in the
proper
canopy.
GI Joe vehicle.
So I carved
Hmm.
the seat down so that he could sit and be visible in the cockpit.
Very industrious.
But the Batman itself, fantastic figure.
He looks like Michael Keaton.
Yeah,
He does.
there's a Keaton-esque look to him. As I say, Bat fever has run through my household, so I got Batmite, aka I got a Lego minifigure of the 1989 Batman.
So cool.
They actually call it the Batman Returns Batman. I'm not entirely
Yeah.
sure what the differences in the uniform are, but he looks
Shinier
cool, man.
hood.
They call it the returns one. Interesting.
Yeah,
Mine.
on the,
Oh wait,
it's one of
let me not
the
spoil it.
it's a polybag Lego figure, so it just comes in a bag and it's under $10, and I'm like, oh, that's an easy pickup. That's an impulse
Sold.
buy. Yeah, lovely to see the cape. It's like a hard plastic piece that's married
I
to
love
the
it.
cowl,
Keaton
because
artist.
famously that bat costume, you couldn't move the neck. He had to turn his whole body. So this is authentic to that. And I
Love
love
it.
posing the Lego minifigure next to the Spin Master 4-inch figure because it is absolutely Batmite in this
Beautiful.
universe. It's sort of chibified. Also, his Batarang. We were talking about this earlier with Legends of the
Oh,
Hidden
the Lego
Force.
one.
The
Yeah.
Lego Batarang fits nicely in the 4-inch figure's hand. So,
They're so
bonus
cool.
accessory. And
And you get, like,
included
3 of
Flash.
them.
Yeah, you did.
Uh.
4. I got 4. Did you get
Oh,
3?
nice. I got 3.
Ooh.
The included Flash is interesting because
It's a
you can see
Batman
in the
figure.
stock- It's a Batman figure, which is great. This is young Barry, so I guess the plot point in the movie, spoiler, I mean, but it is in the plastic. The sculpt uses the Batman Returns batsuit and just spray paints it
Ah.
red and spray
And
paints
then
the
runs
lightning
really fast
bolt.
and sets himself on fire. Cool.
Woo! It spray paints the lightning bolt
Fascinating.
symbol over the bat symbol. I love that. That's so clever. I mean, it's just
Clever,
it's cool.
and it's smart marketing too.
It's cool that the
tooling.
sculpt of this tiny 4-inch figure is savvy enough to have that detail. It's
Yeah.
not just flat. It is a Batman body, but painted up to be a Flash, and with the ears cut off, very deliberately cut off. You can still see the stumps.
Huh.
Love
There's
it.
someone sitting in the factory cutting them off. Snip, snip, snip.
How authentic.
So-
What do you get, Paul?
I got the same Lego minifigure as you, Steve. I got my baggie said it called him 89 Batman.
What?
Oh, so maybe it's actually a different one. You guys should compare.
Yeah,
It might actually
comes in
not be
little-
the same figure.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering now. And he's got this little gargoyle base that you build for him, and he's got one batarang that you put on the base, one that you can have in his hand, and one extra which you can't put anywhere other than losing it.
Because I think
so-
I think the difference between 89 and Returns, I think his costume was much blacker. There was more black accents in Returns, but this is just me like off the top of my head trying to remember. Yeah.
Steve's going to share some video with us.
Oh.
Batman 1992 is what the the poly bag
well,
says.
the more important thing is that number above it. So Stevens is 30653. What is yours, Paul?
That is a damn good question. I have
Because-
no idea where my baggie is.
I know. We can't even compare now.
Anyway, so that was the one new figure I got. And Robbie, this one's actually for you. So
Oh my goodness.
we were sent a handful of
Preview.
figures by Greg Crockett. Thank you, Greg, again.
Lost and found
And
toys. Greg and Natalie,
I got
come on, Nat.
Lost
Come
and found
on.
toys. And I got Rob's figures with me now, and I'm just doing a small modification to one of them before I send them off to him, Rob, which is why you don't have them. But I figured you might want to see this, my dude. So
I am
Your-
very. Whoa. Those aren't
your
dreadlocks.
Lady J came without any hair. So
Dead mint
we had-
figure, but clearly the adhesive had released. My theory is it was carded, and the hair, just because it changes in temperature, the hair fell off in the bubble. And so the owner was
That's
like,
a good theory.
So,
Well,
rip it
now
off.
I have
and-
a completely unique figure. She looks good, Paul.
She
Thank
looks
you, bud.
better than
Very
good. Paul has sculpted using a green substance,
green stuff. Yeah.
green stuff,
Green
has
stuff.
sculpted
Green stuff.
hair. So now it's not just Lady J, it's Lady J Joker variant.
Very cool.
I mean, I will
Paul's
be
gonna paint
painting
it.
it.
You will paint
I hope
it,
you
good.
do the makeup. All right.
But the hair's better than the standard figures hair. You've outdone yourself, Paul.
Thanks, bud.
Well, now I have a completely original version. I have a Paul version. This is wonderful.
Yes, and this is the first time I've done hair sculpt here, Rob. So you have the first
Oh, for reals?
hair sculpt I've ever modeled in my life.
You better sign
this
that
is all
thing.
thanks, and this is also thanks to Jim Godfrey, who gave me some really great advice when I was doing this. And so,
Ah,
yeah.
fantastic.
So
It's a team effort. This is definitely going to make. I'm so happy.
it's special,
Yay.
right? So I've just had to wait for that hair to cure, and then I can paint it. The paint will dry quickly, and I'll put it in a box and have it on its way to you ASAP, my dude.
Yo, Joe, and we can talk about some new Joes all together because I haven't really
Oh
spoken
my
about the stuff that
God.
Greg sent to me either.
Ooh.
Just to close this up, Paul, you popped some cherry by giving Lady J some hair. I popped some cherry by drilling out my first rusty screw.
Ooh.
I did it. I bought the
That
power
must have
tool.
been a harrowing experience.
Yep. In that Terradrome lot, I got 16 figures, and not all of them were in there were a few broken O-rings and one very munted screw. It was rusted to pieces, couldn't drill it
Munted.
out. I mean, couldn't
Such an
munted,
Australian
yeah.
term.
It absolutely is. But typically is used here to describe screws that are screwed. Anyway, so I went to the hardware store, bought an electric drill and some small drill bits, and I got to work on this guy. It was a wetsuit, obviously. I mean, of course, the figure that gets played with in water would have a rusted screw. And I have to pat myself on the back. It was a successful operation.
Yay.
Zero damage done to the figure. I just drilled it. I mean, counterintuitively, I thought a wider drill bit would take off as much of the head as possible and free it quicker. But actually, it was a narrower drill bit that ultimately did the job, because a narrower drill bit just separated the head from the thread. You just want to get that very innermost part separated. There's no sense in trying to erode the widest part of the head.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
the
that makes
drill
sense,
bit is
though.
always going to be tapered anyways, so you're always going to just be removing the center. But yeah, like so satisfying to hear that click and to know that it was the metal that gave way and not the plastic.
Hell
Love
yeah.
it. I'm
And
now
also-
I'm emboldened, guys. Any rusted screws, I'm gonna break out the drill and get to work, baby.
So if I can
Oh,
just
yeah.
give you a bit of a pro tip there, just try and be careful with the speed of the drill sometimes, because if it heats up that screw too much, it's going to actually kind of melt into the plastic a bit. I speak from
Word.
experience.
I was very cautious and slow. I mean,
Good.
my whole approach was
Yeah.
cautious from the get-go because I spent a good long while trying to find a reverse drill bit in that size, which I don't think exists. Because getting a left-hand turning drill bit that small would have the results of like not screwing the screw. Like you want to avoid screwing the screw any further into the torso.
Of
Because
course,
if
yeah.
a drill bit kind of bites down on that screw and then starts turning it into the plastic, it's just gonna push through or crack the plastic or both. But no, I couldn't find that. So the next
Chest
best thing
burster.
was to just go absolutely like glacially speeded, like just turning,
Never man.
just shaving off a little bit of metal each time, and it worked, and I'm delighted. But
Hell
yeah,
yeah,
Paul, I
brother.
think your experience was with a much earlier figure. You had a torpedo.
I had
a
hardwood.
wetsuit.
Yeah.
1986 and onwards, the figure, or 85 even, the torsos are just a bit more beefy, and the screw boss is also thicker.
Night
thanks
figures
to-
are so buff.
Thanks to Han as well, I got that. Although I couldn't use it to make my torpedo descrewing easier, I at least made at least saved my spirit, which is quite cool, and also my dock.
You saved your spirit.
Your spirit is intact.
Yeah, well, now I
Fantastic.
could at least So, yeah, sounds like this has been quite a bumper episode, and sounds like we're all having like awesomeness happening.
Wait,
at
Paul,
the
you've got a specific tool for doing it? So
Yeah,
tell us your
Johan sent
experience.
me like a screw bit, a drill, like a special head, and it's got
Hey,
like
Joe
these, like,
Mauler works to the rescue.
and dude, I would have totally sent it to you, but you'd literally like as I got it, you were getting on a plane to Australia, because
Should have
I
mailed
even
it
sent
to
you a
him.
message to like go, hey, when are you leaving? And you're like, I'm already on the plane, dude.
Yeah.
I'm
like-
out of here.
Oh,
But
Fuck,
so
because-
what does
Bye,
this tool
Africa.
do to everyone
So
who
what
is
it
in the
does is,
dark?
so if the head breaks off, right? What it does is it's like a little claw, and it kind of hooks into what's left of the screw, and then helps to like pull it out. And so
But
it
that's
gets like
only
a bit
if
of
the head has broken off. So my
That's
argument
if the
head
is, wouldn't the two halves of the torso then just fall apart anyways?
yes, they would, but then you want to get that screw out to replace the
Yeah,
screw, right?
I
So
used
that's what-
Yeah.
I used the needle nose pliers and just gave it a good.
Yeah, you could do
twist.
that, or if you basically cut out a new shape for a screw,
Yeah.
or a thing to be able to kind of turn it out.
I think
there are
first
lots
prize is
of
to just turn out
solutions.
that old screw, and needle nose
That's first
pliers
prize.
will
Yeah.
generally.
out for what?
I mean, as long as you've got a little bit of that thread exposed, like if it's completely disappeared into the torso, you are screwed.
No dice. Yeah,
Yeah.
no dice.
No diggity.
You have
Gents,
to have a precision instrument. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
thank our patrons once again. Thanks everybody, month to month.
Dun,
If
dun,
you
Thank
go
you,
to
everyone. Beautiful
patreon.com/GI Joburg, you too can join the Berg Force, be here live when we record these episodes, get other bonus materials, and just be a general all-round awesome dude.
Awesome dude.
However, if times is tight, we totally understand. You are an awesome dude or dudette or person of undisclosed gender, even for listening.
All
Yeah,
of you.
share,
Anyone.
Yeah.
subscribe, do things. We
hit
thank
the
you for
bell,
joining
hit
us
the
on
like. Or should I say
this
thank you for hitting the bell and the likes? Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Sorry.
Yep.
Thanks for being
Yep,
cool,
yep, yep.
people. And catch you in the next
You rock.
294.
Mhm.
And
Well, we
thank you
might.
again for flying our GI Joburg shirts at JoeFest. That was really cool.
For sure. Join us 294. We might actually finally say thanks for the memories.
294 issue 5.
5.
Yo, Joe. Blue, blue, blue.